I can't believe how messed up my life has become in just 4 years. 4 years ago, my wife started working at Gilbert Endeavors. Our kids were teenagers, and Sarah couldn't wait to leave the house. Back then, an entry-level secretarial job seemed like the right choice. I'm Skip Trexler, but everyone calls me Skip. I was a wiry guy, average height, weighing less than 140 pounds. In high school, I wasn't into sports, but I enjoyed long-range shooting. Throughout high school and college, I spent most of my free time either shooting or reloading. After 8 years, I became skilled at hitting a 2-inch target at 100 yards. My favorite weapon was the Marlin 336C with a caliber cartridge 219. Even though this cartridge was no longer in production, I made my own from 30-30 shells. Achieving success in this gave me a much-needed sense of pride. 2 important things happened in college. I met my wife Sarah and my future business partner Chuck Fuller. Besides, it was a bit boring. I got a degree in geology, got married, and started a small surveying business with Chuck. Life was good. We never worked for anyone. After college, we each invested $2,500 and started our own small surveying company. We focused on small jobs and real estate sales. We didn't make a lot of money, but we felt comfortable and happy. Chuck married a local girl 3 months after Sarah and I did. My family had a bungalow in Schuylkill County on 160 acres where we held all our family gatherings. When I was younger, the Fullers had a cabin on 640 acres in Potter County. Chuck and his family only used it for hunting. That's all you need to know for now. As I mentioned, my life started going downhill about 4 years ago. Gilbert Endeavors designed and manufactured trainers. Though their headquarters were local, they had manufacturing plants and distribution centers across the country. Sarah, my wife, started working there when our twin daughters, Marcy and Mercy, entered high school. Initially, it seemed like a good idea. Good hours, fair pay, and a convenient location. The first year or so was perfect. GE hired Terry Ulrich, a former NFL quarterback, as a marketing manager and company spokesman. Unfortunately, my wife worked in the marketing department for 6 months. We were bombarded with stories about the magnificent Terry Ulrich, and my wife and daughters were crazy about his greatness. Luckily, the adoration faded after about 6 months. Around the same time, Sarah started working overtime. Chuck and I, being locals, knew many people working at Gilbert. It wasn't hard to find out that Sarah and Terry Ulrich became a couple. As their relationship grew, our marriage deteriorated, and I grew distant from my daughters. I never told her about this. She began to travel more on business and promotional trips, and I became a non-entity most of the time. She invited me to parties and gatherings where I was ignored for the entire evening. Closeness was out of the question. How can someone endure such a life? Before Sarah started working, our family life was normal. Weekends and vacations with the whole family, ballet lessons, football, PTA, and scouts. Every week we had a pizza night. The only thing the girls didn't like was spending time in the bungalow. All of that is in the past now, disappearing over the past few years. Sarah's conference attendance, retreats, and meetings gradually increased. Lately, on several longer trips, she took the girls with her, never inviting or asking if I wanted to go. I often overheard the girls telling their friends about the great time they had. They never said anything when they knew I could hear. Terry Ulrich was never mentioned, although I knew he was on every trip. At Gilbert's New Year's party, everything fell into place. It was hard for Sarah not to invite me. I didn't want to go. The humiliation of facing infidelity alone was bad enough. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to control myself if things got out of hand. I was right. All the girls were dressed up, excited for their first adult party. I didn't have a tuxedo, so I wore the best suit I had. When we arrived, there were hundreds of people milling around. "Skip Trexler, it's good to see you. Thank you for bringing your wife and beautiful daughters." Terry Ulrich seemed to smile as he squeezed my hand, and Sarah smirked. The girls looked at me with disgust and quickly left. It was the start of a terrible evening. I drank a glass of beer and hid in a corner, trying not to embarrass my wife and daughters even more. I didn't say or do anything, yet I managed to ruin the start of their evening. Terry Ulrich was a big guy, really big, at least a foot taller and 100 pounds heavier than me. All muscle. He embodied happiness and success. My daughters flocked around him, while my wife spent most of the evening next to him, lightly holding his hand. Lower-level people made feeble attempts to talk to me, and mid and senior level managers noticed me, smirking or making sly remarks related to my new status. I didn't hear their words, but it was clear what was happening. My beer was replaced with a simple ginger ale, which I sipped slowly. I usually kept myself in control and took pride in never losing my composure. People started dancing, and I noticed the girls having a good time, including my wife with Ulrich. In the last 3 hours, neither she nor the girls spoke to me. A small group on the dance floor pointed at Sarah and Ulrich, laughed when they looked my way, and quickly turned away when I caught them giggling. That marked the end of my evening. I put the glass down, headed to the door, and saw Ulrich with his hands on my wife's rear while she caressed the back of his head. Before I knew it, she pulled his head down and gave him a big kiss on the dance floor. It took me less than 5 seconds to cross the room, spin Ulrich around, and hit him as hard as I could with a roundhouse right. My arm hurt like hell, and the next thing I knew, I was waking up in the back of an ambulance. The ride to the emergency hospital was a few minutes, and I noticed I was the only one in the ambulance. I remembered being wheeled into the emergency room and waking up in a recovery zone. A doctor visited me half an hour later, sharing the latest news on my condition. Besides the broken arm, I had 3 broken ribs, a broken nose, 3 knocked out teeth, and 2 loose ones. My jaw was clamped with wire, and my right kidney was bruised. Ulrich finished it off with a good blow to the testicles, causing several blood vessels to be damaged. The doctor said I could be discharged in about 4 days, but I'd have to spend at least 2 weeks in rehab. I chose the first option. Late afternoon, my wife and daughters finally appeared. Sarah appeared annoyed, the girls looked bored, and nobody said anything. With my tense jaw, I hesitated to start a conversation. I could talk, but I didn't want her to know. Assessing her attitude, I decided I didn't need this conversation. Instead of answering, I just muttered and pointed at my jaw. We sat there for a good minute before she spoke again. I was embarrassed. She conveyed that the girls were so humiliated that we had to leave before the new year. The whole evening was ruined. And for what? She expressed regret, mentioning she should have known what it would be like to take me out in public. She guaranteed that nothing like this would happen again. Little did she know how right she was. I just sat and looked at her, unable to manage a smile, so I didn't do anything. They lingered for several minutes, and since I didn't react, they eventually got up to leave. Chuck showed up a couple of hours later. We chatted for a few minutes. Yes, I could talk. Then he pulled out the local newspaper. I made it to the front page. The story was about how I attacked my wife at the Gilbert Endeavors New Year's Eve party. Chuck and I talked for a couple of hours, discussing several options. After he left, I refused dinner and asked for sleeping pills. I needed a good long rest. Most of the next day involved being checked, probed, and poked. All damage was discovered, and appropriate measures were taken. Now all I could do was wait and heal. A hospital staff member gave me a list of recommended rehab centers, and I chose one near Hamburg. Chuck showed up later that evening. I sold him my share of the company for $2,500, with the handshake being the most important part of the deal. I was still a co-owner, but not on paper. Good things take time. We laughed about the fact that 1 week in rehab cost $2,500. Sarah and the girls never saw me again in the hospital. They came back the day after I moved into rehab, annoyed that they weren't notified. They were very angry when they came to rehab and were denied access. It looks like I was able to specify who could and couldn't visit. When I logged in, an orderly informed me they were trying to meet with me. My ribs hurt like hell when I laughed. And the worst part of my injuries was the dental work. Luckily, they had a dentist who could work on site for a certain fee, and I decided to take advantage of this. The wound on my hand wasn't as serious as they initially thought. Although I had the opportunity to leave rehab a little earlier, I decided to stay for the full 2 weeks. 10 days later, I was able to breathe deeply again. It was nice. Sarah never tried to visit me again. The National CrossFit Show happened in Atlantic City on the second weekend of February. Sarah and the girls were in attendance, along with Terry Ulrich and the GE marketing team. Chuck and some of our team spent the weekend moving my stuff to a bungalow in Schuylkill County. He made sure to take my Marlin rifle and reloading supplies. In 2 days, I was settled in my new home. Chuck and his wife June visited that weekend. It seemed Sarah was looking for me at the office. There had been no deposits into the joint account since the year began. and Sarah wanted an explanation. Chuck spent half an hour explaining that I no longer owned part of the company and didn't work there. In desperation, she ran out threatening to meet with a lawyer. After a couple of weeks, I was back to normal, doing therapy and exercises as directed. Chuck left me with a company truck and a credit card. I also took a substantial amount of cash with me. I left my phone with Chuck. The bungalow was cozy but temporary. I walked and started jogging leisurely. Terry Ulrich had a large house on Duryea Street just outside of town. It was a long, winding road up Mount Penn, with few houses due to the steep mountainside. Finding the house wasn't hard, and I found good secluded vantage points. Every morning, I exercised to get in shape. After lunch, I practiced target shooting, focusing on inanimate targets. My Bushnell laser rangefinder indicated I needed to be accurate at 133 yards. I bought a lot of eggs and a muffler. Evenings were spent planning, adjusting, and recharging. I grew a beard. Chuck visited every 2 weeks, while Sarah tried to find me at the office, but gave up after 2 months. Chuck brought newspaper clippings, showing my wife and daughters enjoying the high life with their new benefactor. Sarah and the girls still lived in our old house, puzzling me. It was time to move on. I started heading back into town early in the morning to watch Terry's house. He swam 50 laps every morning, even in a heated pool on weekends. I went to Potter County. The move from a bungalow to a hut was welcome. No electricity, running water, or cell phone signal. The nearest Walmart was a 45-minute drive in Olean, New York. I stocked up on everything for the next 4 months. Early Wednesday morning, I moved my stuff from the truck into my Subaru Outback. I parked the company truck at a construction site and climbed to my chosen vantage point. In the morning, I set up a tripod with a round in the chamber and 2 at the ready. 20 minutes later, Terry Ulrich went out for his morning swim. The first shot shattered his right ankle. Even with a muffler, it was noisy this early. 2 seconds later, his left knee exploded, and I loaded the next 2 rounds, taking out his left elbow. My final target, his right wrist, was hard to aim at due to his erratic movements. I left quietly. 10 minutes later, I left the construction site and returned to the office to the Subaru waiting for me. I didn't go back to the bungalow, but straight to Potter County. The first step was to clean the water source for fresh water. After that, I collected firewood and found the cabin well insulated and watertight. LED lights replaced old carbon oil lamps. Soon, everything was under control, and I started shooting again, this time at paper targets. In the middle of the second week, I saw her for the first time. She was a tall woman on an old logging trail with a backpack. She passed by, and I set up a fire pit with coffee and cookies, feeling like I was setting a trap. 3 days later, my trap worked. Claire apologized and introduced herself. She expressed a hope for conversation, and we sat down. I offered her some coffee, the best I could do. She nodded, smiled, and took off her crossbow before sitting down. I shared that my name is Skip, and that I arrived here about 2 weeks ago. I mentioned spotting her in the area a few times and staying at a lodge about a mile from there. I explained my daily routine and handed her a cookie. I inquired about the duration of her stay, and she said she'd be there until the end of the summer. I mentioned my plans to stay for at least 4 or 5 months. She seemed to enjoy my cookies, although I sensed she preferred cream and sugar in her coffee. Noticing her silence, I asked if the property belonged to her. She clarified that it belonged to her friend, who allowed her to use it. When she asked if I was hunting, I explained that I used to shoot a little, but hadn't done anything for years. Currently, I was just doing some target shooting. I then invited her to use the shooting range for practice with her bow. She had an accent I couldn't quite place, but I refrained from asking about it. She accepted the offer and ate a second cookie, leaving me with a good feeling. I couldn't help but express my curiosity. I thought most folks use compound bows nowadays, but your recurve bow looks brand new. Trust me, it has better curvature. She used simple arrows for target practice, but always had 4 hunting arrows mounted on her bow. That evening, I drove several miles down the road and picked up 3 bales of hay. This marked the beginning of my summer with Claire Charles. Claire visited daily and returned home every evening. The lodge staff tracked her through her cell phone, so they always knew her whereabouts. At the start of our second week, a strong summer squall hit us. We huddled on the cabin porch, laughing and poking fun at her predicament. Without saying a word, she took out her phone and called the lodge, explaining that she couldn't return due to the weather and had found a comfortable place to stay for the night. I was both surprised and delighted. This is how my platonic relationship with Claire Charles turned into a close one. From then on, we alternated our sleeping spots. Highlands Lodge felt out of place in Potter County, being luxurious and expensive. Most guests were from overseas, and Claire's family hailed from Cornwall. The lodge provided hot showers, abundant food, and laundry services, which I fully utilized. Outdoor activities are enjoyable, but they're even better with everything you need. We spent less time at the shooting range. A couple of weeks later, while having lunch, Chuck and June arrived. June seemed especially pleased that I had a companion, more so when she realized it was a full-fledged relationship. We kept a low profile for the first few hours, and then June and Claire went off to chat. After the tragic attack on Terry Ulrich, I became the primary suspect. This posed a more significant problem for Terry than he anticipated. The press wanted to know why I was the main focus of interest. As they delved into it, things got worse for Terry and my wife. Though the spotlight was on finding me, the press quickly shifted to the relationship between Terry and my wife. 3 weeks later, Terry Ulrich was no longer representing the Gilbert endeavors. Police checked the Schuylkill County bungalow and found it empty. They had no credit card leads, no phone calls, and no idea where I might be. They never questioned Chuck about the cabin. Chuck mentioned that Sarah came to the office several times, trying in vain to find out where I was. She seemed desperate as her source of money dried up. According to Chuck, Terry lost interest in her and blamed her for his problems. I had no plan for the next step. I couldn't go back and had no other options I wanted to explore. At the moment, I was drifting. As we neared the end of the year, I felt myself becoming complacent. I was happy and content with Claire, but I should have paid attention to my real life. It was a cool autumn day, and I was alone in the hut. Something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I had just heated up the wood stove and made coffee when the door suddenly swung open. Terry Ulrich was just as big and ugly as the last time I saw him. He stood in the open doorway with a wide smile on his face and an old police SWAT pistol in his right hand. He seemed to stand unsteadily and held his left arm at an odd angle, as if trying to maintain his balance. We just stood and looked at each other. I expected some profound words of revenge, but nothing came. Coffee. Fool. I spent over $10,000 to find you. No, I don't want any damn coffee. Well, what can I do for you? I know it was you, you sneaky little weasel. Your wife told me that you did a lot of target shooting. I hope there is special services here because it will be needed. His face became swollen and red as he spoke. He seemed to be driving himself into some kind of rage. Suddenly, a shocked expression appeared on his face. He dropped the weapon and fell to one knee. Terry Ulrich rolled over on the floor and howled at the top of his lungs. About 12 inches of a crossbow bolt protruded from his left buttock. The remaining 6 inches were buried deep and firmly. Claire just stood in the doorway and smiled. We ran almost all the way back to the Highlands. I didn't take anything with me from the cabin. It took Claire about 15 minutes to load all her belongings into the rented Land Rover. We laughed the whole time like a couple of high school kids. Finally, we calmed down to a fairly normal state. When we reached US 80, breakfast was comforting and filling. I assumed he had already removed the arrow and gone to the hospital. I expressed doubt, suggesting that he should call special services since I had shot him with one of the 3-bladed hunting arrows. I explained that it needed to be cut out and couldn't be pulled out. I predicted that he would likely have to lie on his stomach on a gurney when he goes to the emergency room, which must be awkward. I mentioned the predicament to Miss Claire, stating that it seemed like we were in big trouble now, and I playfully attributed it to her. She flicked a fork full of scrambled eggs and laughed. After breakfast, I called Chuck, and Claire called someone else. I brought him up to speed, and he seemed to find it quite funny. I told him we were going to Ocala, Florida, where my grandparents lived. He chuckled a little, because he knew I only said that to cover his ass. While I was on the phone, Claire came over and took my wallet out of my pocket. She returned to her seat and continued the conversation while I bought treats for our trip. I didn't know where we were going, but I felt like Claire had a plan. She didn't tell me anything, and I didn't ask. I was happy with my ignorance and trusted her. It was a tiring day, and we finally found a great bed and breakfast in the Wisconsin valleys to rest. Exhausted from the road, we quickly fell asleep. The breakfast was fantastic, and 4 hours later, we reached the Duluth Walmart. Claire had her belongings, but I left with nothing. She kept me in the dark about her plans, and it seemed like she was having fun doing so. I got a new set of clothes, and Claire grabbed a big bag of snacks. Since I was a kid, I always dreamed of canoeing on lakes, and now I finally got to do it. Everything was arranged upon our arrival, and the outfitter even took care of Claire's rental car. This hinted that we probably wouldn't be coming back. It was both intriguing and exciting, and I couldn't wait to see what else Claire had in store for me. Before departing, I made a final call to Chuck, and he informed me about Ulrich's latest failure, which had become a significant news story even picked up by national services. June's laughter echoed in the background. Chuck shared that Ulrich's media image was plummeting, and he couldn't seem to do anything right. He expressed his satisfaction, stating that it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Chuck also mentioned that Sarah was clueless and broke after the divorce, which apparently hit her hard. I was taken aback and clarified that I didn't consult a lawyer and wasn't aware of any divorce. Chuck insisted, claiming that Sarah was ranting about it that morning and asked me to stop by the cottage to pick up his things and car, since he was in Moss Bluff, Florida, looking for a trailer to rent. Claire waved from the dock as the loaded canoe awaited. Grateful for my Boy Scout camp experience, at least I didn't feel like a complete idiot in the canoe. We spent the next 6 days exploring the lakes, setting up camp each night. Claire, using her cell phone GPS, navigated us seamlessly. I enjoyed the trip, and most notably, the nights filled with starlit closeness. The following day at noon, our adventure continued. A man met us at a remote road pier, hugged Claire, and they spoke in French. About half an hour later, he handed Claire the keys to a truck along with a large envelope. We unloaded the canoe and hit the road. Looking back, I saw him push off from the dock. Driving, Claire rummaged through the envelope, mentioning that I would have to get used to being called Clinton. Really? I gave her a puzzled look. She giggled and handed me a Kennedy-like driver's license with my photo, now labeled Clinton Barfield. I questioned if she was kidding, to which she responded with a firm, "Nope." She informed me that I was now Clinton Barfield and proudly presented my new Canadian passport. She mentioned that we were currently in Canada. 4 days later, we arrived in New Quay. 2 hours after that, we were at Claire's family home near St. Austell. It felt like I was born there. I was comfortable and content. The prospect of meeting Claire's family worried me. The mansion was enormous, and her father invited me to his office. Against the far wall was an elegant walnut weapon cabinet. He reached inside and handed me a rifle, my Marlin 336S with a chamber in it. I realized I was home. I never heard from Sarah or the girls again. Chuck and June received strange Christmas cards every year from Mr. and Mrs. Clinton Barfield. They had no idea. This year, the card will feature a photo of us with our 3 children. I'm sure he'll figure it out.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
Emily and I had been married for just over 3 years when everything started to fall apart. About 6 months ago, her attitude took a drastic turn, not gradually, but suddenly. I returned from one of my infrequent business trips to find a woman I barely recognized. The respect and affection we once shared had vanished, replaced by insults, hostility, and constant refusal of intimacy unless I initiated a fight over it. I couldn't shake the suspicion that either someone was poisoning her mind against me, or she was involved with someone else. One spring Friday evening, I arrived home from another out-of-state trip. As I stepped inside, Emily descended the stairs dressed provocatively in a tight black cocktail dress that left no room for underwear lines, paired with towering red heels and heavy makeup, more than I'd ever seen her wear. She was stunning, but her demeanor was icy. "Well, look who's back," she sneered. "You cheating piece of garbage. Good thing you're here. Now I don't have to wait for Nathan to pick me up. Don't bother staying up. I won't be coming back tonight." I stood there, stunned. "What are you talking about? I've never cheated on you. And who the hell is Nathan?" She refused to answer, only glaring at me. Anger flared in me. "Listen carefully, Emily. If you walk out that door tonight without me, don't bother coming back tomorrow. Once you leave, this house is no longer yours." Still livid, I pressed her further. "Since you're so sure I've cheated, how about telling me who fed you that lie?" And where are the so-called proof and witnesses? Emily grabbed her purse and pulled out some photos, shoving them at me. Nathan showed me these. He says this is you with some woman named Olivia. Explain that. I glanced at the pictures, instantly spotting the forgery. A laugh nearly escaped me, but I was too angry to find humor in it. Seriously, Emily? Look at these pictures. That's not me. It's my head pasted onto someone else's body. That guy's shorter, has a tattoo, and isn't even wearing my hairstyle. Are you blind? Who gave you these? Nathan? Her expression faltered briefly, but she quickly doubled down. Nathan told me everything. He says you've been with Olivia, and these pictures prove it. Before I could reply, the doorbell rang. I stepped past Emily to answer it and found myself face to face with a nervous-looking man in a sport coat. He was about 5 feet 9 inches, noticeably shorter than my 6 feet 3 inches frame, and his left hand fidgeted near his pocket. Part of a tattoo peeked out from under his sleeve, identical to the one in the photos. You weren't supposed to be back until tomorrow, he stammered, his voice betraying surprise and unease. Without hesitation, I grabbed his arm and shoved his sleeve up, exposing the tattoo. Emily, look at this. Isn't this the same tattoo in those fake photos? A knife fell from his pocket as I held him. Ignoring me entirely, Emily brushed past and addressed him. Let's go, Nathan. This a-hole is going to learn the consequences of cheating. They started down the walkway together. Stop, I shouted, causing them to pause. Neighbors stepped out onto their porches, drawn by the commotion. Emily, your belongings will be in the garage. Don't think for a second you're coming back after this. I showed you the truth, but you chose to ignore it. When you realize your mistake, don't come crying to me. You've destroyed my love for you. Then I turned to Nathan. And you? If you think you'll get away with this without consequences, think again. Payback's a bitch. It might not happen today or tomorrow, but it will happen. They laughed nervously, and Emily flipped me off as they walked toward a car parked at the curb. What a homecoming. My name is Liam Lawson, and at the time of this fiasco, I was 34 years old. I work as a systems troubleshooter and senior installer for a small but significant security software company. Thanks to stock options and reinvesting bonuses, I also own nearly 15% of the company, the largest individual stake aside from the founder himself. Emily, however, knew none of this. She was unaware of the true extent of my financial position, as I kept those details between myself, my lawyer, and the IRS. I met Emily when I was 26, fresh off a broken engagement after my ex-fiancé cheated on me. I thought I'd found someone different, someone I could trust. But standing there that night, watching her walk away with Nathan, I realized I'd been wrong. I was going into the airport when Emily dropped a piece of luggage and had been over to pick it up when a distracted klutz named Liam crashed into her. I apologized and helped her get to the security line. After we both got through security, we headed in the same direction, as we now only had our carry-on bags. I offered to take hers to as far as I was going. When I told her what gate, she started laughing. She said, "Don't tell me you're going to Dallas on the 9:30 flight." I am too. By the way, I am Emily Henderson. I know you didn't disrupt me on purpose, so if you would, when we get to Dallas, would you stick around me until my sister shows up? There is an angry old boyfriend that works at the Dallas airport, and if he sees me, he is liable to try to hurt me, she continued. I know it is a lot to ask, but my sister is having a baby and her husband is deployed overseas, and I am needed to help her. I'm just afraid that Tommy will see me. My sister tells me that he has flown into our home airport and tried to find me. I know it sounds strange, but you have been so nice to me I thought I could trust you. I agreed to stick with her as I had nowhere. I had to be until the next morning. I also hated abusive a-holes. When we boarded, she was in the seat across the aisle from me. I always took an aisle seat because of restricted legroom on the tin cans that the airlines use today. We talked the entire flight. As we started deplaning and walking down the ramp, a man in an airline ground crew uniform came toward us. I put my arm around Emily and stared at the guy. When he saw my move, he slowed, and as we got closer, he saw how big I am and turned and beat a quick retreat. I gave Emily my cell phone number and told her to call me if she felt the old boyfriend was going to be a problem. It turned out that when I was ready to head back home, Emily was staying to continue to help her sister. Her brother-in-law's brother and a couple of his friends decided to visit the ex. It worked. A week later, Emily called and thanked me for the help I gave her, and she mentioned the ex-boyfriend requested and received a transfer to the West Coast. When Emily returned a few months later, she called and asked me to join her for lunch. We met for lunch, and things seemed to click between us. I found out she was 22 and had been in only one long-term relationship, and he was now in San Diego driving a luggage truck at the airport. We went to dinner later that week, and that started a year of dating. That led to me asking her to marry me. She said yes. The planning started. Then Murphy decided that a cheating fiancé wasn't joke enough. I got testicular cancer. The surgery and chemo were terrible, but Emily was there through it all. She kept saying that it just delayed the plans, not ruined them. The cancer was caught early, but I lost a testicle and was rendered sterile. I was, and am not impotent, just sterile. After a year of being cancer-free, we started planning again. Murphy decided to leave me alone. Another small delay was convincing Emily that I was serious about no cheating to the point that I demanded a prenup with severe penalties for adultery. I had to explain to Emily that it was a deal-breaker and no signature. No wedding. She signed finally after a 2-week deep freeze. The wedding was great and the honeymoon was in Belize. We swam, snorkeled, and had many adult beverages. I discovered that I like alcohol too much, so when the holiday was over, I quit drinking. I never stopped anyone around me from imbibing. I just didn't. A little over 2 years after the wedding, Emily told me her company was merging with another, and they were integrating the two staffs. She made a few comments about some specific people, but not anyone noteworthy. One thing that did happen was when the merger actually started, her attitude went into the toilet. She started to make little nasty, snide comments. She also started to question every move I made on the out-of-town trips. She was also turning down lunch dates when I was working at the office and in town. The worst was the direct insults. That was what I was putting up with before the Friday night date. After she left, I called a friend, Ethan Cole, who was a locksmith, and had him change all of the locks and install a new code in the garage door opener. He charged me as if he didn't know me from Adam and said it was because Emily told him about my cheating. He didn't change the bill but understood that I was being wrongly accused when I showed him the crappy photoshopped pictures. I was pissed that she had tried to do that. That meant that I was now going to burn her and him down to the ground. I would enforce the prenup. The divorce lawyer was going to go on my speed dial Monday. My boss had gone through a messy divorce, and only a shark of a lawyer saved him from a vindictive ex-wife and her lover. I would use his recommendation for an attorney. I also decided to screw with her mind. I called her boss, who was also a friend and customer. Ryan Blake told me that the blending of the two companies went well except for two of the newcomers. Nathan Reed and Olivia Bennett were not happy that they were not given management positions and were making trouble for a couple of the old-timers. He added that they were both facing termination as they had several disciplinary problems. I told him I was going to make his day. I explained what happened tonight and about the photoshopped pictures. He asked me to send them to him and gave me his company email address. I scanned and sent it, and he called me back. It was his troublemakers, and the head in the picture came from was the wedding picture from off of Emily's desk. He said that if I wanted, he would fire both of the troublemakers. I said yes, but if they went, Emily needed to go too. I told him what she said tonight. I even told him about showing her the tattoo on Nathan's arm from the screwed-up picture. I garbage bagged all of Emily's stuff that I could find and put it inside the garage door. I locked up, unplugged the house phones, and went to bed. Saturday morning, I woke at my usual 6:30 and there was no noise. I checked my cell phone and there were 7 messages, all from Emily. I didn't delete them, but I didn't listen to them right away. I was just finishing my breakfast when the house phone rang. As soon as I plugged it back in, I answered, and it was Emily's mother. Edna was, and is, a loving, caring person who I had almost adopted as a second mother. She was crying. I told her to calm down and tell me what was wrong. It took a couple of minutes, but when she was finally coherent, she said Emily told her about last night. She went on to explain. Emily told me she went out and had sex to pay you back for your cheating. Then when she had let the man screw her, her words, he laughed and called her a dumb 304 and showed her the original pictures. Emily was devastated and cried on the phone to me that she had ruined her marriage. She continued. She said she tried to call you and left at least half a dozen messages. She also said the a-hole left her in a town 20 miles away and told her to find her own way home. Is all this true? I replied, I am sorry, but the fact she cheated is true. She told me it was because she had pictures that showed me messing with a woman. The picture was a terrible photoshopped mess. I showed her that the guy could not be taller than 5 feet 9 inches and had a tattoo on his left arm. She wouldn't listen, and as she walked to his car, she flipped me the bird. She did indeed destroy our marriage. I am going to a lawyer Monday and will not take her back. She has obviously been listening to people at her work and has treated me like crap for the last 6 months or more. I continued as Edna started sniffling. I have changed all of the locks, and she will not be allowed back in this house. I will also enforce the prenup, which means she will have no claim on the house, alimony, my pensions, or IRAs. I'm sorry if this hurts you and David, but this is the second time I've had a woman cheat on me, and I told Emily I would not allow that to go unpunished. I have never cheated on her. When you talk to her again, tell her that her stuff is in the garage, but she will need to come when I am here as I have changed the codes. She also will not be able to get in the house. I have changed the locks. I was winding down but got one last shot across her bow. Emily has also been telling people that I cheated on her. It almost cost me one good friend, and if it affects any more of my friendships or my work, my revenge is not nearly done. Edna said she will let Emily know what was going on and ended the call. I decided to listen to Emily's messages. They were all filled with crying I'm sorries and begging me to forgive her. The last one was a surprise. Nathan told me after he screwed me that I could find my own way home, and then he added, if you have a home. I don't even know how I would get back. I don't even know where I am. That last call came in about 4:30 in the morning. I felt I couldn't leave her out there somewhere. I called her back. She answered and started crying. Emily, stop crying. You need to give me any information you have. You screwed up our marriage beyond fixing, but I will come and get you and take you to your mother's. She gave me the motel name and the cross streets, and I was able to Google the city and directions. I found her outside what looked like a rent-a-room by the hour dive in a bad part of town. She started to say something, but I held up my hand to stop her. I am here because you were once my reason for living. You destroyed that over the last 6 months or so, and bombed out what was left with your actions and words last night. I want you to get in, buckle up, shut up, and leave when I take you to your mother's. Do you understand? Don't say anything, just nod if you do. If you say you're sorry one time, I will pull over and put you out of the car. I am furious with you, and it is not just that you broke your vows. You have treated me like I was dog crap on your shoe for more than 6 months. We are done. It's too late to be sorry. She got in and silently cried all the way to her mother's. As she got out, I took her hand. I am going to a lawyer Monday. I am filing under adultery. If you don't fight it, I will give you 1 year of alimony. If you fight it, I will strictly enforce the prenup. Goodbye. Remember, I loved you, and you threw it all away without even thinking about it. I even showed you that I was not the person in that picture, and all you did was flip me the bird and get in the a-hole's car. Then you screwed him, and were surprised when he told you the same thing about the picture. I really hope you get some therapy. You have allowed others to cause you to make very bad decisions. I don't hate you, but I don't love you either. After the divorce, if I never hear your name or see you, I won't miss you. One last thing. You had better tell all the people you told that I was cheating the truth. I have already had one friend tell me he lost me as a friend because of what you told him. When I showed him the stupid picture, he laughed and told me he was sorry he listened to you. I closed the car door and drove away. I filed that Monday, and Emily was served on Wednesday at her mother's house. The 3 conspirators were fired, and Nathan somehow managed to trip and fall and break both arms and his nose. Olivia was married, and when the reason she was fired and the picture showed up at her house, she was sued for divorce also. Someone, probably her lawyer, told Emily to fight the divorce. I withdrew the alimony offer and went for strict enforcement of the prenup. They requested marriage counseling. I told the judge that I was not the one that needed counseling. I asked why would I agree to that when I was subjected to the abuse and cheating. She agreed, and told Emily that any counseling that needed to occur was just for her. She said that if she could, she would order her into that counseling. She also awarded me the house, both cars, and all of the monies we had accumulated during our marriage. Emily discovered that we were very well off, and that she screwed herself out of a comfortable life. Emily never came to the house for her stuff, and I finally gave it to the local women's shelter. The divorce was final, and I did not hear from Emily again until after more than 2 years her mother called. Edna called and told me Emily was in a hospice with inoperable brain cancer. She was still lucid, but wouldn't be for long. She probably only had 3 or 4 weeks left. Edna also said that Emily needed to talk to me one last time. I went to the facility and saw Emily. She was just a shadow of the beautiful woman she had been. She did smile when she saw me. I took her hand and sat down next to her bed. She sniffled and said, "Liam, I have never stopped loving you. I am so sorry for what I did to you. I know, and looking back, I think I knew even then that you would never have cheated on me. I was blinded by the bullshit and flattery. I know it doesn't change anything, but I will die regretting every hurt I inflicted on you. Go now and find a good woman and love her as you loved me before I destroyed it." With that, she closed her eyes and went to sleep. I stood, leaned over, and gave her a gentle kiss. She seemed to have a small smile on her face as I wiped the tears from my eyes and left. She died 3 weeks later, and I was given a large insurance policy payout that I didn't even know she had bought. The money went to the local women's shelter. I did not need it, and I met Emily when she was trying to escape an abuser. It just felt like the right thing to do. I have moved on. Our company was bought out and Ryan and I, as the biggest shareholders, got very rich. I moved to Belize and am a beach bum with a couple of local widows that like to entertain me. In my condo, on the wall over the couch is a picture of Emily and me from on our wedding day. Ironically, it is a blown-up version of the picture Emily always had on her desk. I found that after my anger was over, that while I could not forgive her, I still loved and missed her. Every year on our anniversary, I fly back and put flowers on her grave. It is getting less painful, but it still hurts. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Kim and I first met roughly 7 years ago and quickly formed a close friendship. Both of us were raised in the Midwest, where our devout Christian beliefs placed God above all else, even family. Our Sundays were filled with church visits and hopeful discussions about our future plans. I pursued a successful career as an engineer with promising prospects, while Kim thrived in her role selling accounting software for a prominent technology firm based in Atlanta. Before our marriage, my parents generously gifted me a 3-bedroom house upon my college graduation. With their wealth, they aimed to share their success while still alive, unlike many who wait until after pass away. Mom and Dad found joy in giving during their lifetime. Kim and I exchanged vows a little over 5 years ago, and since then, we've been on an endless honeymoon. Our lovemaking life was vibrant, with passionate encounters at least 4 nights a week. We were viewed as soulmates, much to the amusement of our friends who were envious of our closeness. Our joy multiplied when we welcomed 2 beautiful blonde twin girls into our lives. After their arrival, our focus shifted entirely to raising them in a nurturing and loving environment. Our lifestyle might be deemed dull by some. We typically dined at home most evenings, reserving Friday and Saturday nights for outings and Sundays for church. Unlike peers our age, we weren't drawn to socializing or keeping up with fashion trends. Kim opted for conservative attire both at work and home, reserving our lovemaking moments exclusively for our bedroom built on trust and transparency, forming a sturdy foundation for our marriage. Kim, naturally affectionate, expressed her love through tender gestures of touch, kisses, and hugs, all of which I adored. We relished in sharing our emotions and cherished each other deeply. While raising twins presented its challenges, I cherished every moment spent with them. Though the twins posed some stress for Kim, I gladly supported her through any difficulties. Our partnership was built on effective communication, ensuring we dealt with issues promptly. Life with Kim and our twin girls was going smoothly. However, a week before the annual exhibition, Kim received notice that she had to participate due to others falling ill with the virus. Despite her attempts to decline, she had no choice but to comply due to the urgency of the situation. She expressed her regret, saying she was sorry to leave us for 3 days and that she had tried to avoid it by contacting her boss. She mentioned how much she hated being away from us. I reassured her that we would manage fine without her for a few days and that we would miss her dearly. I helped her pack and accompanied her to the limo arranged by the company for her airport journey. Our marriage had always been solid, built on trust and transparency. There had never been any indication of her behaving in a way that wasn't loving or faithful. We shared everything openly and worked together as a team, especially when it came to our children. On the second night of the exhibition, I received a text from Greg, a colleague and friend who was at a cybersecurity event in Atlanta. He mentioned Kim being at the exhibition and asked if I was supposed to be at the security conference. He seemed curious about the trade show Kim was attending, and I confirmed it was in Atlanta, but wasn't sure of the exact name. Greg's messages left me wondering what he was trying to imply. His message contained 2 photos and a video. I sat paralyzed with dread. The first photo depicted my wife in an unfamiliar outfit, the shortest dress I'd ever seen her wear, accentuating her ample chest with a plunging neckline. She wore pumps I didn't recognize, her hair and makeup flawless, radiating stunning allure. Never had she appeared so alluring to me. Initially, upon seeing the first photo, I convinced myself it must be someone resembling Kim, as it seemed implausible it could be her. I chuckled inwardly, musing, I wish Kim would dress like that one day. But the amusement faded when the subsequent photo emerged, a close-up of her closely seated next to Jonathan, one of her bosses. I sat there, stunned, motionless, not even blinking, until the next photo materialized, a close-up of her smiling and gazing into Jonathan's eyes. My heart sank at the sight. Though I attempted to rationalize, there must be a logical explanation, albeit futile. The following message contained a brief video clip showing my wife kissing Jonathan, her arms wrapped around his neck while his hand rested on her right breast. In that instant, my mind exploded. I felt as if my entire world collapsed upon me. Tears of anguish streamed down my face, my heart racing, and a wave of nausea engulfing me. A message came through. "Hey, are you okay? What should I do? Can you see her right now?" "Yes, I'll give her a call right away to check on her." I dialed her number, hearing it ring several times before reaching voicemail. Leaving a message, I expressed our longing to speak with her and ensure she had a pleasant evening. I reached out to Greg, updating him on the call. "I just tried reaching her. What happened?" Greg's remorse was palpable. "David, I'm sorry about this. She took her phone out of her purse, glanced at the caller ID, then returned it to her purse. I can't believe it's her. I've never seen her behave or dress like this before." "Greg, it's okay. Thank you for being upfront with me. You're a true friend. I'll handle this myself. If possible, avoid confronting her. Keep me informed if anything else occurs. But don't waste time trailing her. I'll handle it from here." "Are you going to be okay, buddy?" "No, I'm far from okay, but I know what I need to do. I'll handle it. I'm still reeling from the shock, but I'll come to terms with everything. Thanks again." "Anytime. I'm here for you. Take care of yourself, Greg. Thanks once more." I poured a stronger drink and sat in the dimly lit living room, grappling with the sudden collapse of my world in under 20 minutes. I had been oblivious to any issues in our relationship. How long had this been going on? Was I truly oblivious to the signs? No. She never gave me cause for concern. In fact, over the past 6 months, our bond had grown stronger, our closeness intensified. None of it made sense, leaving me bewildered. In the following hour, Greg sent more photos and videos. A brief clip showed them dancing, his hand on her back. Another captured them kissing on the dance floor. A photo depicted a deep, private kiss on a deserted dance floor, oblivious to the music's end. I acknowledged it was over between us, yet there was much I needed to unravel and comprehend. Leveraging my analytical skills as an engineer and problem solver, I spent the ensuing days devising a plan. Kim surprised me with a call at 10 p.m. After receiving their final photo, I took a deep breath, striving to compose myself. I resolved not to reveal any inkling of awareness about her actions. "Hey there, sorry I missed your earlier call. I was at a dinner meeting and couldn't talk. I miss you so much, baby. Wish I could be there with you, cuddling under the covers, showering you with kisses. I miss you too, Kim. I love you deeply, and thanks for calling. The girls are adorable, and I'll send you some photos. They're missing their mom and want you to come home." I tried to leave tomorrow, but my boss insisted I stay. "Hate being away from you, darling. We'll celebrate when you're back. Finished for today?" "Yes, I'm preparing for bed and another long work day. Love you, baby, and I'll call you tomorrow. Good night, Kim. I love you more than words can express." And with that, I hung up, tears welling up again. What I said was genuine. I loved her more than anything and hoped this was just a terrible dream. Past midnight, I lay in bed unable to sleep. I wondered if she was truly in her hotel room and what she was up to. My question was answered by another message from Greg. It was a photo of Kim and Jonathan on a lobby sofa, sharing a kiss. His hand was beneath her short skirt, her arms wrapped around his neck. They resembled a couple in love, publicly displaying their affection. "And one last thing, buddy. I'm done for today, but looks like she's busy. Let me know if you want me to stop. I can easily put an end to this. It's tough to face right now, but thanks for the photos." "No need. Let her go. It's her wrongdoing, not yours. Stay out of it." "Thanks again." I cried myself to sleep, knowing that the love of my life had betrayed me. Eventually, exhaustion and the comfort of our marriage vows and our daughter's sleep eased the pain and tears until I woke up the next morning. Kim sent me several affectionate messages adorned with hearts, kisses, and emojis. She professed her love, expressing how much she missed both me and the girls. She even hinted at a passionate night ahead upon her return. When she came back, she showered me with sweetness and affection, behaving as though nothing had transpired. I began to wonder if perhaps she suffered from dissociative disorder or had been unknowingly medicated. Despite my search for explanations, I realized I needed to confront the reality and prepare for her imminent return home. Our frequent conversations seemed normal, with Kim expressing her longing to reunite with us. I couldn't determine what upset me more, her infidelity or the deceit accompanying it. Feeling deceived cut as deep as witnessing her embrace with Jonathan. Upon learning of my wife's betrayal through Greg's messages, I took decisive action. Leveraging my tech expertise, I discreetly installed tracking software on her phone, initially intended for locating misplaced devices. Opting for the latest software available, I even walked Kim through its setup. This software also featured a voice recorder capable of capturing calls, texts, and emails with automatic cloud uploads if activated. Let me clarify, my intention wasn't to spy on her, but circumstances warranted caution. Before this incident, I never considered invading her privacy. However, following recent events, my trust had been shattered irreparably. My priority was safeguarding our daughters and salvaging our marriage, if feasible. Thankfully, caring for the twins kept me occupied, offering respite from thoughts of our disintegrating relationship. Whether it was preparing breakfast, tidying up after them, or engaging in doll play, these moments were precious amidst the turmoil. Trust me, tending to 3-year-old twins is no small feat. It was 2 p.m., and I finally managed to get the girls to settle down for their afternoon nap. After tidying up the house and showering, I sat at the table to catch up. Kim had sent me 6 more affectionate messages, mentioning she would call at 5 p.m. once her day wrapped up. After reading them, I accessed the cloud from my laptop, logged into her account, and reviewed everything recorded since activating the spying software. I sat in shock as I read the messages exchanged with Jonathan. Here are a few excerpts. "You were incredible last night, baby. Can't wait for tonight." "Thanks, kitten. I enjoyed it too. Can we head to my room after work before dinner?" "Certainly, but I need to call my husband first. I should be ready by 5:15. "Does your husband suspect anything?" "Of course not. He thinks I love him, and I'll keep it that way. We've kept it a secret for over 6 months, and he's clueless. Don't worry." My anger became overwhelming, prompting me to stop reading. "Kitty! Did he call her kitten? That's my term for her during closeness. Did she give him that too? Was I truly that oblivious? What kind of fool was I?" I dropped my laptop on a chair and screamed, grabbing a lamp from the table and hurling it forcefully into the wall, shattering it into pieces. The rage I had managed to control now consumed me. As I was about to break another lamp, I heard the girls crying. Their cries snapped me back to reality, and I regained control. I rushed into the bedroom, holding both girls in my arms until they calmed down. After cleaning up the glass from my outburst, I let them play in the living room while I sat with another strong drink, reflecting on my actions. In my view, the marriage was beyond repair, and it was time to take action. I lacked the strength to listen to their conversations or review any more files, so I allowed them to accumulate in the cloud. I decided to play along with Kim, just as she had deceived me. My immediate plan was to act like a loving husband while strategizing my next steps. I intended to contact a divorce lawyer, hire a private investigator, and find a way to secure custody of the girls. Their well-being was my top priority, and the only thing that truly mattered to me. "Hey, sweetheart, how are the girls holding up? They're missing their mommy." "Oh my goodness, they're on my mind all day, every day. And of course, you too. I can't wait to wrap my arms around you. When I get back, I'm going to give you the warmest kiss you've ever had." I played along, saying, "Oh, darling, I think of you constantly, longing to embrace my loving, beautiful wife. Soon, my love, we'll be reunited." Somehow I kept it together, and our call lasted precisely 15 minutes. At 5:15, she bid farewell, saying, "I love you, David. I have to go catch the bus back to the hotel. I'll message you later. I love you." Another effortlessly delivered lie. She had quite the talent for it. "I love you too, sweetheart. More than you can imagine." The pain of her deception has now transformed into contempt, anger, and a desire for revenge. I was determined to expose her lies and hold her accountable. I had loved her wholeheartedly, making this betrayal all the more difficult to bear. I greeted her at the airport, and she embraced and kissed me just as she had promised. Either she was an exceptional actress, or she genuinely cared for me deeply. Was her involvement with Jonathan merely physical? Her behavior continued to baffle me. She spent an hour with the girls, relishing their company. That night, she was exceptionally affectionate in bed, repeatedly expressing how much she missed me and the girls, and lamenting her prolonged absence. She spoke of wanting nothing more than to be with me, holding each other in bed. She was tender, loving, and entirely different from the woman I saw at the fair. I reciprocated her affection and cherished our time together. It felt genuine, and I yearned for it to be authentic because being with her was all I desired. Yet, deep down, I knew it would soon come to an end. I kept my newfound knowledge hidden, showering her with love and fulfilling her every night. To outsiders, our relationship seemed idyllic, sparking envy in others. This charade persisted for 3 months, during which I searched for any signs of infidelity but found none. She arrived home from work at her usual time every evening. No unusual phone calls or text messages. I even dared to hope that it was all a mistake and that things would resolve themselves. Mr. Bryce, a private investigator, called me and arranged to meet the next day. I drove downtown to their office and sat in their conference room. "Good afternoon, David. Good to see you again." "Likewise, Mr. Bryce." "David, I wish I had better news, but unfortunately I have to deliver some bad news. Are you prepared to review our findings?" I sighed and nodded in agreement. While I hoped for the best, deep down, I knew what was happening between Kim and Jonathan. Mr. Bryce placed a thick leather 3-ring binder in front of me. It contained sections labeled text messages, voice transcripts, video calls, phone call transcripts, and photos. "Mr. Bryce, before we delve into this, I'm perplexed because I've been closely monitoring her activities and schedule for the past 3 months, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She's been the ideal wife and partner, and none of this makes sense." Let me guide you through this and see if anything becomes clearer. I refrained from accessing cloud files because I couldn't bear the thought of reading the texts, hoping for a positive outcome. Unfortunately, that hope was dashed. There were over 75 pages of text messages, 25 pages of emails, and 75 pages of time-stamped photos showing them entering and exiting hotel rooms together. Additionally, there were over 82 video calls and 50 pages of phone conversations. Kim and Jonathan had been visiting a motel at least 4 times a week for the past 3 months, spending an average of 2 hours together during each visit. "It appears that for the past month there have been 2 men meeting your wife 4 times a week. Do you recognize this man? Oh my God, is this Jason Sinclair? Is he the CEO of her company? Are you saying she's involved with 2 men, one of whom is the CEO? I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but based on the evidence from text messages, phone calls, and videos, it's evident that he's engaged in a carnal relationship with your wife. The video call labeled Balcony actually captured them in a love-making moment, with him behind her as she leaned over the railing. They seemed unaware they were being recorded. Our high-definition video captured close-ups of their faces, and the audio was also recorded." He played the video on the 80-inch screen. There was Kim, my wife, leaning over the railing with her CEO standing behind her. I felt sick to my stomach. I had to step out of the room for a few minutes to compose myself. I returned to the conference room, urging them to continue, as I was now eager to see what my wife had been up to. The video labeled Balcony 2 shows your wife with both Jason and Jonathan simultaneously. I regret having to show you all this, but since they were in public, you can use these videos if you decide to proceed with your divorce and custody battle. I sat there, mouth agape, still finding it difficult to believe it could be Kim. I prayed fervently that it was all just a colossal mistake. "David, we've looked into Jonathan Wilkes and Jason Sinclair. Jonathan has been married for 10 years with 4 young children. Mr. Sinclair has also been married for 25 years with 3 grown children. Text messages reveal that Jonathan introduced Jason into their activities after your wife expressed interest in a triangle of love. It's quite grim, so I'll leave you to review it when you're ready. Here's the folder and a USB drive containing all the files and videos. Your lawyer will likely need both." When I met with my lawyer, she was astonished at the wealth of evidence we had gathered and couldn't believe there were no prior signs of infidelity. At home, Kim continued to play the role of a devoted wife and mother, behaving as if everything was normal. The lawyer outlined various legal avenues based on the evidence I provided, but needed time to explore our options fully, scheduling another appointment for the following week. I instructed her to begin filing the divorce papers as soon as possible. Leaving her office, I felt a pit in my stomach. I knew it was over before these meetings, but watching those videos extinguished any hope of reconciliation. I was still baffled. Who was this woman? Later that evening, after putting the girls to bed, we watched an old movie I found on Netflix called Unfaithful. I heard it was a good film. "Let's give it a shot," I suggested, hitting play. Given the film's theme of infidelity, I had prepared for the conversation in advance. During the movie, I casually mentioned a female intern at my office who had been showing interest in me for months. "Can you imagine me with another woman?" I chuckled. Kim eyed me suspiciously. "Really? Who? If I catch you even thinking about being with her, I'm leaving. Got it? You're mine and no one else's," she asserted sternly. Despite my attempts to keep the mood light, she was dead serious. She made it abundantly clear that she wouldn't tolerate any deceit. It was astounding how indignant she was about it, considering her own actions. It was driving me mad. "David, why didn't you tell me about her sooner? What's her name?" Kim? Relax. She's just an intern, a young, flirtatious girl. I've completely ignored her. What about you, Kim? You're the most beautiful girl in your office. Do you mean to tell me no one ever flirts with you? Of course not. They all know I'm married and would never cheat on you. So, in our entire marriage, you never entertained the thought of being with another guy or did anything like that. Not even a friendly kiss? Have you ever cheated on me, baby? Her anger flared. Are you kidding me? Did you seriously just ask me that? I constantly express my love for you. I'm always faithful to you, and I couldn't imagine being with another man. You're being ridiculous. I can't believe you'd even think that. I apologized, agreeing with her, and resumed watching the movie. I chuckled to myself, thinking she could have been an actress with how convincing she was. No wonder she excelled at her job. Once things settled down, she leaned against my shoulder again, and I knew it was time. I grabbed my phone, opened the messaging app, and selected a photo of Kim and Jonathan kissing on the dance floor, his hand on her behind. I was studying the photo when she noticed my distraction. What are you doing, David? Why aren't you watching the movie? Because what I'm looking at is more real. What do you mean? I muted the movie and displayed the photo to her. She froze, attempting to speak, but failing. I kept my gaze on the photo. Quite the passionate kiss you're giving Jonathan. Allow me to explain. Where did you get this? You were dining with your buddy, Greg Stanton, who spotted you with that guy in the restaurant. He texted me to confirm if it was you or if he was mistaken. Turns out it was indeed you, and he sent me this. Also, gotta say, you look stunning in that dress. I've never seen you in something so revealing. Were you trying to impress your boyfriend? Oh, you have an explanation? I'm all ears, I remarked, placing the phone back on my lap. Baby, we only had one dance, and he was intoxicated. After the song ended, he grabbed me and kissed me. What you don't see is that right afterward, I slapped him and caused a scene. I would never allow that to happen. I actually bought this dress for a business dinner, but didn't realize how revealing it was until now. I'm so sorry. I understand. It happens. And that was the only incident. I sensed her wavering confidence and reassured her, yes, baby, and he won't try it again. The movie resumed, and I reclined quietly, knowing Kim was uneasy. After a few minutes, I retrieved my phone and began playing a video of them sitting on the couch, with hand under her skirt. She shot me a frightened look. What are you watching now? Remember that night when you called, saying you had a long day and were getting ready for bed? Yes, she whispered. It's interesting. I received another text from Greg, 2 hours after your call, and this time it was a video. Do you want to see? I asked, hitting play, revealing her and Jonathan kissing, while his hands roamed her lovemaking areas that should have been mine alone. I'm eager to hear a new explanation, I remarked, smiling. My anger had dissipated, replaced by contempt and amusement at her response. Oh, David, I'm so sorry. After we hung up, Jonathan called saying we needed to discuss an issue with a client we were meeting in the morning. He asked me to meet him in the lobby to prepare. I barely recall this video because I had a few drinks and got a bit drunk. You know how I get when I'm intoxicated. I understand the video looks damning, but nothing happened beyond that. I distinctly recall going to my room, telling him to stop, reminding him I was happily married and leaving. Nothing transpired. You have to trust me. That's part of the issue, kitten, I said, emphasizing the nickname. I noticed her reaction when I said that and continued. The problem is, I've always believed you, yet in the last 20 minutes, you've lied to me twice. Can you understand my perspective? I'm here alone, and the woman I love is kissing her boss in 2 photos dressed in the most revealing outfit I've ever seen her wear. How do you think I feel, baby? David, I love you. This happened 3 months ago. Why didn't you confront me earlier? Honestly, I wanted to see if you'd come clean on your own. I wanted assurance that my wife was as truthful and transparent as we've always been with each other. But now I see where we stand. Are there any other lies? Are you involved with him? Do you love him now? I was toying with her, relishing her confusion and performance. She began sobbing, repeatedly professing her love for me. Kim, please refrain from telling me how much you love me. I know you love me and I still love you, but that doesn't change the reality of these photos. I need answers. Are there other deceptions? I added, discreetly hitting the record button on the phone. David, hear me out. Nothing beyond a kiss happened. I admit I kissed him, as you saw, but that was the extent of it. Each time I told him to stop. I'm not sure what Greg saw or told you, but you have to trust me. All right, stop crying, baby. I trust you. However, I'm puzzled by your attire. You never dress like that for me, nor do you style your hair and makeup that way. Was it for him? You haven't answered my question. Do you have feelings for him? Are you considering leaving me? Kim, please, I need the truth. The tears resumed. No, David, my love is only for you. I never want to lose you. Nothing happened. And I'm not sure why I dressed like that. It's unlike me. Perhaps it was because other women were dressed similarly, and I wanted to look as good. I'm not certain. I felt a bit insecure. I can understand that. But why didn't you inform me about Jonathan and your interactions? Since nothing truly occurred and I ended it, I didn't want to upset you. He's my superior and I couldn't risk losing my job. If anything happened, if it truly did, I would have told you immediately. You understand, right? I comforted her with a kiss and embraced her gently, allowing her to cry. This marked the beginning of a month-long scheme to exact my revenge. That night, we made love, and I reveled in her remarkable skills, detached as her spouse, and envisioning myself as one of her lovers. I refused to deny myself her body or caution her about anything peculiar. Her acting was commendable, but at that moment I was indifferent. She was more fervent than ever, attempting to convince me of my exclusive place in her heart. This routine persisted for the following weeks. Each night her performance was flawless, and I simply savored the spectacle. The next morning I checked the cloud for any correspondence with Jonathan. Predictably, she didn't disappoint. Oh my God, someone took photos of us at the fair and sent them to David. His friend saw me at the restaurant without David. I'm unsure if he's aware, but the video showed us kissing. Damn. Now that you mention it, I recall a man with a phone across from us observing, but I didn't think much of it. How did David react? Nothing. I convinced him nothing happened. I intervened. He's unaware I spent the night in your room. I persuaded him it was drinks-induced and made amends. He's easily swayed. A few kisses and good lovemaking have always sufficed. Be cautious, baby. We agreed to meet there tomorrow at 1 p.m., as usual. Can't wait. Love you, baby. Love you too, kitten. That marked the final message, and I sat silently pondering it all. Undoubtedly, I felt like the world's biggest fool. Yet, there's a certain satisfaction in revenge, so I proceeded with determination. However, I took pleasure in observing Kim's antics and awaited to see how many more lies she would spin. Naturally, my first course of action was to tend to my financial affairs, transferring funds, closing accounts, and the like. I opted to keep my primary Visa card active, but slashed the limit to $2,500 to mitigate potential damage. Since Kim remained clueless about my mounting anger, she never anticipated any changes. I confirmed with my lawyer that since the house was mine pre-marriage, I wouldn't be compelled to vacate upon notification. Naturally, I drafted the infamous email containing videos, texts, and photos that I eventually sent to all her contacts, friends, family, and coworkers. Additionally, I crafted duplicate binders from my personal account for Mrs. Sinclair and Mrs. Wilkes to share in their anguish. These would be distributed simultaneously with notifications and legal filings. I instructed my lawyer to gear up for public civil lawsuits against both Jonathan, her boss, and Jason, the company's CEO. Given the company's prominence on the East Coast, my lawyer relished the prospect of involving the CEO. We planned to propose a settlement before unveiling the CEO and manager's alleged carnal aggravation of employees. Collaborating with child services attorneys, we aimed for full custody and diligently compiled documents for the investigation. Over the ensuing weeks, everything appeared normal. We tended to the children and spent quality time together daily. Our conversations danced around the elephant in the room, leaving the issue untouched. I'm certain my silence on the matter drove her to the brink of madness. The uncertainty of my thoughts must have been agonizing. To further toy with Kim, I posed a few probing questions. So Kim, has your boss taken any action against you since the fair? Is there something you'd like to share? Having gleaned insights from her conversations with Jonathan, I marveled at her composure in maintaining her facade of deceit. It was amusing to observe her reaction, and now I could even predict when she was about to lie. She responded calmly, stating that nothing had occurred. It felt odd because both of us were acting as if nothing had transpired, which was true. In reality, he remained completely professional, and our interactions were minimal due to our busy schedules. I sat there with a wry smile, still astonished that the woman who bore my children and whom I loved could lie so effortlessly. That night, I released the last remnants of the anger simmering within me. I confronted her and took full advantage of her that night. Oh my God, David, what got into you? You're behaving so wildly today. I've never seen you so bold and uninhibited. I enjoyed it. What a whirlwind, I thought to myself. I knew this would be the final encounter before all of this turmoil surfaced the next day, and I intended to take everything I could from my soon-to-be ex-wife. That afternoon, the sheriff entered the offices of Tricom International and requested to see Mr. Sinclair. Moments later, Sheriff Clark handed him an envelope. "Mr. Sinclair, you've been served." A moment later, Sinclair found himself alone in his spacious office, clutching the envelope with fear gripping his entire being. After reading the complaint repeatedly, he promptly instructed his secretary to summon Jason to his office, while simultaneously calling him. Jason, too, had just been served by the same sheriff. He rushed into Sinclair's office, and they both stood there, stunned and bewildered. "What the hell? How did this happen? Jason, if my wife catches wind of this, I'm finished. This is on you. You assured me this woman would never leave us. Fix this, Jason, or I swear I'll ruin you and your family. Do you understand?" Sinclair was not one to be trifled with. A ruthless businessman who had clawed his way to the top of the multi-billion-dollar organization and had no intention of backing down. Jonathan hurried out of his office and waited for the elevator to descend to the 12th floor, intending to speak with Kim. As he traversed the hallway toward her office, he noticed the sheriff approaching from the opposite direction, indicating that he had come from Kim's direction. Bursting into her office, he found her seated at her desk, tears streaming down her face. Overwhelmed with emotion, she was unable to speak. David had shattered her world, much like she had done to him months earlier. It took her more than an hour to compose herself enough to articulate her thoughts. "Akeem, what in the world happened? How did he find out about everything? What do you mean?" "I've just been served with divorce papers. What do you mean by us? Sinclair and I are also being sued and facing a civil lawsuit for our actions. We're unsure of the evidence against us, but there must be more than just the 2 images you saw. You need to convince David to back off, or else Sinclair will ruin us and my family." "Oh my God, this is terrible. It's awful. You must go to him and make him see reason. Do whatever it takes to halt this. Head home and address this. Call me tonight if you can and keep me informed." Trembling, Kim packed her belongings and drove home. Her beloved husband and the father of her children was divorcing her. She didn't want a divorce and genuinely loved David. However, she found herself unable to resist the allure of carnal excitement. She needed to make David understand that she couldn't bear to lose him over this. Returning to an empty house, she found the girls were at David's sister's house, as they were every afternoon while they both worked. She phoned David's sister, requesting if she could keep the children overnight. Without inquiring further, Katie gladly agreed to take care of the girls for the night. Kim showered, styled her hair and makeup, and anxiously awaited David's return from work. At 6 o'clock, she heard the garage door open and nervously anticipated his entrance into the house. "Hi, Kim. Didn't expect to see you tonight. Thought you'd be with Jonathan." "Oh, wait, he's married with kids. This might get awkward." "David, please, let's talk." She took his hand and seated him beside her on the sofa. Despite the circumstances, she appeared surprisingly composed and more pleasant than usual when greeting him. Expecting this, he played along. "David, as you already know, I was served today. But do you realize I don't want a divorce? I need you and love you. I won't sign these papers. Jonathan means nothing to me. Yes, we had lovemaking, but it wasn't love. I just needed it, and I'm truly sorry. I'll never do it again, I promise." "Oh, you promise? Guess I can trust you now." "Sure, let's forget everything and get back to normal," I said, smiling lovingly. Kim embraced me and planted a kiss. "Thank you, baby. I love you so much. I'm grateful you forgive me and understand I won't lie to you again." Surprised, I was certain she caught my sarcasm. Pulling away, I gently pushed her aside. "You're delusional. I can't trust you anymore. After all your lies and deceit, there's nothing left. I gave you many chances, but you kept lying, deceiving me and ruining our lives. I know all about your daily hotel rendezvous with your bosses. Did you really think I'd take you back after all this? Have you even considered the damage you're causing to the girls? I can't turn a blind eye to this. But you can. And why go after Sinclair and Jonathan? Well, your partners in crime are also CEOs of a multi-billion-dollar company. Once I'm out of here, I'll need money to properly support the girls. Since they're partly responsible for destroying our marriage and my life, I'll destroy them too. I plan to dismantle their family, hit them financially, and use them the way they used you." Kim had never witnessed David express himself in such a manner, nor had she seen him so intensely angry and focused. The seriousness of the situation finally struck her, and she realized she had lost control over both the situation and her husband. All she could do now was plead. With tears streaming down her cheeks, she knelt before David, clutching his legs, begging for forgiveness. Though David felt a pang of sympathy for her, his anger overpowered any compassion, and he lifted her onto the sofa. Speaking to her in a gentle tone, as if she were a child, David laid out a plan. Listen, Kim, pack your bag and stay at your mom's for a few nights. Get a lawyer, then we can arrange a meeting to discuss everything. In the meantime, a word to the wise. I suggest you stay away from Jason and Jonathan. Things are about to get messy. Later that evening at her mom's, she explained that she and David had a disagreement and she needed to stay with her for a while. At 11 p.m., she called Jonathan on his cell. Jonathan quickly looped in Jason on a three-way call. Jason, are you here? Kim, are you there? Yes, we are here, Sinclair initiated the conversation. So, Kim, did you manage to persuade him to give up the lawsuits and the divorce? No. In fact, he kicked me out and warned me to be careful because it could lead to trouble. Sinclair shouted into the phone, Jesus Christ, Jonathan, what have you done? Kim, you're a freaking prick. I swear I will have you and Jonathan eliminated if my family finds out about this. I don't care what you do, but make it stop. Kim cried, I can't do anything. He is out of control and won't listen to anything I say. He doesn't even answer my calls or texts. Sinclair spoke up. Jonathan, you need to fix this. Make an appointment with David and have him meet us at a bar somewhere. Anything loud and the noisier the better. Kim, you will be there too and ask him to drop the lawsuit in front of us. If he says no, then Jonathan and I will explain how damaging it will be for him and his family if he doesn't back down. I have people tasked with fixing things like this, and I won't hesitate to use them to keep this show from turning into complete crap. Jonathan, do you understand what you need to do? Yes, Mr. Sinclair. Kim, you know what you have to do, right? Yes, Mr. Sinclair. Do it and make it happen tomorrow afternoon. We don't have time to waste. Sinclair disappeared. Kim and Jonathan hung up after a few minutes, considering the situation. That night, upon hearing the call, David wasn't surprised by their desperation and devised his own plan. As expected, Jonathan called the next morning to arrange a settlement meeting. They agreed to meet at 6 p.m. in a courtyard. At 4 p.m., David was at his private investigator's office, preparing for the meeting. They utilized cutting-edge technology with noise cancellation to capture clear sound, even in noisy environments. A private investigator would also be present to film the meeting as evidence. David arrived at 6:15, purposefully keeping them waiting and allowing time for the private investigator to set up his video camera. Upon seeing Kim, he approached the group. Kim, I'm surprised to see you here with your partners, but I suppose we know where your allegiance lies. Gentlemen, what brings us together? Why are we here? Sinclair spoke up. David, I'm Jason Sinclair, and I requested this meeting. Sinclair, you look quite different in person. These videos don't capture your essence. Can't say it's a pleasure to meet you. Indeed, that's precisely why we're here. This is Jonathan Wilkes. Jonathan, the man who slept with my wife and wrecked my marriage. Can't say it's a pleasure to meet any of you. Sinclair interjected. I understand your anger. If I were in your shoes, I'm not sure how I'd react. But we need to discuss something. Follow me. What's on your mind? Asked David. We want you to drop the lawsuits against me, Jonathan, and the company. Funny, that's all. Oh no, sorry, can't do that. Someone has to pay for taking away the most important thing in my life, David stated, looking at Kim. The only woman I've ever loved, and the mother of my children. Kim began to cry, realizing the magnitude of the damage she had caused. What will it take for you to end this and take Kim back? Name your price. Firstly, no amount of money could ever make me take her back. She betrayed my love, trust, and our children's lives for a fling with you two. It's out of the question. I'll drop the civil and corporate cases under two conditions. Firstly, I want $5 million compensation. Secondly, I want to meet both your wives, and Kim must fully admit her actions. If you agree to these conditions, I'll end the legal proceedings. Go to hell, David. I'll offer you $100,000, and you'll sign an agreement to keep quiet about this forever, Sinclair whispered. I won't let my family suffer. If they find out, David, I'll end you. Kim told us your daily routine. Making you vanish would be easy. Let's try again. David was surprised, but smiled and took a sip of his drink. Well, I'll reduce the amount to $4 million, but your families must know what you did. Sinclair was stunned. David, you're sealing your fate. Think it over. Drop the charges and take Kim back. It was just a fling. We can resolve this. David grabbed his phone and sent 2 text messages. Then he accessed his email and dispatched the prearranged email containing all the videos and images. Texts had now been distributed to all of Kim's friends, family, and colleagues. The 2 messages he sent were to the couriers stationed outside Jason and Jonathan's residences, awaiting his directives. The instructions were simple: deliver the package. Within moments, Mrs. Sinclair and Mrs. Wilkes possessed duplicate 3-ring binders containing comprehensive evidence of their husband's affair, including photos, videos, messages, phone logs, and other incriminating evidence. Sinclair, growing increasingly irate due to David's apparent indifference, erupted in anger. "What the hell, David? I'm speaking to you. What's your response? Are you dropping the charges?" To which David retorted, "My answer to you, Jason, Jonathan, and my wife is go to hell." Just then, the phones of both Jason and Jonathan began to ring. It was their wives on the line. Sinclair's face reddened, shooting David a glare of fury. Jonathan, visibly shaken, even teared up. Kim, bewildered, questioned David about the commotion. His response was cryptic. "Check your email in a few minutes, and I believe you'll understand." After ending the call with his wife, Sinclair pointed an accusatory finger at David. "You're dead, David. I'll slit your throat and watch you die like a dog." With that threat, he stormed out of the bar. Jonathan, confronting David, uttered a plaintive, "Why? Why would you do this to me?" David was astounded by the question. "Seriously? You've been using my wife, the love of my life, and the mother of my twin girls, every day for the past 6 months, arranging trysts with Sinclair. And you're surprised someone would retaliate? Everything I sent to your sweet wife was for her sake, to expose what a depraved beast of prey you are and how you've destroyed countless lives." Kim's phone began ringing as her sister, brother, and aunt called her shortly afterward. They all watched the videos and photos and had numerous questions. Initially, Kim denied knowledge of the situation, but then checked her email to see what I had sent. Her jaw dropped, and she shot me an angry look. "How could you do this to me? You've made it too easy. Darling, I truly love you, but it's over between us. After I hand this audio recording of the meeting to the authorities and social services, my lawyer is confident I'll secure full custody of the girls, and you'll be fortunate to evade jail time. I'm sorry, but you must face the consequences of your actions to prevent them from becoming public knowledge." Tricom resolved the lawsuit by compensating David Hunter with $2 million. Jason Sinclair was ousted as CEO and terminated without severance due to breaching the morals clause in his contract. He suffered losses exceeding $10 million in stock options and forfeited a $5 million severance package. Sinclair also received a 5-year sentence for conspiracy to commit homicide and other charges. His wife divorced him while he was incarcerated and financially decimated him upon investigation of his business dealings. He exited prison destitute, bereft of family, and homeless. This news provided David with some solace, and he even cracked a smile for the first time in months. Mrs. Wilkes also divorced Jonathan, leaving him without money, shelter, child support, or half of his income in alimony. He was fined $1 million in a civil trial for conspiracy, infidelity, and loss of affection. Following his job loss, Jonathan resorted to working as a day laborer. Learning of Jonathan's downfall further gratified David, who took pleasure in Jonathan's subsequent bankruptcy and life under an overpass among day workers. Kim received a 5-year prison sentence, but with David's assistance, it was commuted to 1 year of house arrest, followed by 4 years of probation for conspiracy. She lost custody of the children, and David gained full custody. Despite her efforts, she failed to secure a divorce due to the evidence and the nature of the crime. With the house belonging to David, she found herself homeless upon termination. She earned the same amount as David, so no child support was necessary. Kim spiraled into a profound depression and now resides in her mother's basement. Her family turned against her for her actions, resulting in the loss of her visitation rights with her children. The email I sent with the attached videos and photos exposed a dark side of Kim that no one had recognized before. This had the intended effect, completely shattering the support network within the Kim family. Forgiveness seems unattainable for Kim, even from herself. She relies on medication following 3 self-destruction attempts and has been in and out of mental hospitals for the past 6 months, struggling to come to terms with the lives she contributed to destroying. David now dedicates all his time to his daughters. Being free from work post-divorce allows him to focus entirely on raising his children. Since Kim's self-destruction attempt, the girls have not seen their mother, but they receive ample support from David's sister and mother. They will recover from this traumatic ordeal without any lasting effects. While revenge brought a fleeting sense of satisfaction, it cannot fully heal David's wounds. He still harbors love and forgiveness for Kim, but the memory of her betrayal remains etched in his mind. Taking care of his daughters keeps him occupied and wards off loneliness. However, due to the betrayal, lies, and deceit, it will take years before David can open his heart to love and trust again. It's remarkable how seemingly insignificant actions can have profound effects on numerous lives. Caution is advised.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
When I first met Lila on her father's coffee plantation, everything changed. She was young, lively, and effortlessly captivating. Short and curvy, with a spark in her eyes that could light up a room, she was a force of nature. The moment she smiled at me, I felt like I was hers, like she owned me completely. My name is Jack Calloway, and for the past 5 years, I'd worked as a commodities researcher, specializing in coffee futures for several companies on the New York Board of Trade. My job took me around the world, collecting data on anything that might influence market prices, weather patterns, business climates, government stability. It was demanding, but I was good at it, and that set me apart from the competition. In this line of work, you form connections. Some of those turn into quiet alliances, whispers exchanged over beers about the market, insider moves. Nothing overtly illegal, but skating close enough to the line to make me wealthy. A couple of million stashed away in investments, enough to live comfortably. Not rich, but secure. With some of that money, I bought a flat in Greenwich Village. It had once been an artist's studio, full of light and space. I'd remodeled it with inlaid mahogany floors and an open plan that suited my somewhat free-spirited lifestyle. It was a perfect fit for me, a place where I could retreat when I wasn't traveling the globe. By my mid-30s, I had settled into my bachelor lifestyle. No wife, no permanent ties. My job had me on the move too much for that, and I'd never found anyone who made me want to commit. Casual relationships were easy to come by. Too easy, if I'm honest. But as time passed, I found myself getting more selective, maybe because of the health risks, or maybe because I was just tired of the same old routine. I was sort of seeing a girl regularly. Marlena Wells played guitar in a Trinity basement bar that had opened up about 6 months ago. We weren't exactly an item. It was more that we had an unspoken agreement. Neither of us wanted entanglements, and we both were pretty selective. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. I was in Nicaragua in the province of Matagalpa. There were persistent stories about conversion of coffee acreage to other uses. This was a not uncommon trend in Central America and could cause major disruptions to the futures market. I wanted to get out and talk to farmers and better understand the whys and wherefores of what was going on. I was at the plantation of Diego Alvarez. I had been his guest for about a week while he was showing me around some of the nearby plantations and getting me in to talk to the owners. I had met his younger brother in New York at a trade show, and we got on well. It was a great help to my research, and I made sure Diego knew how much I appreciated his help. We had been gone all day, and on the way, back stopped and had a couple of icy beers from a local bar that Diego frequented. The beers were long-necked Victorias, kept in a washtub at the end of the bar. It was the local version of Heineken, but it was not as good. Not anywhere near as good. But it was cold and wet and tasted a hell of a lot better than it should have. It was kind of neat the way they worked the beer. You just helped yourself, and once in a while, someone would come along and pick up the empties and add to the tab. They never wiped the tables, but they were very good at picking up the bottles. Diego dropped me off at the ranch house and said he needed to talk to his foreman for an hour or so. He told me to go ahead and get cleaned up and have a couple of real Heinekens. We had been batching it, except for the servants, but I knew they would be long gone this late at night. Diego's wife and daughter were in Managua visiting friends. They wouldn't be back for another week, well after I left. I stripped my dirty clothes. I was sweaty and filthy from stomping around coffee plantations all day, not to mention riding in the Jeep along dusty roads. Clouds of dust type of dusty. I walked naked to the kitchen and grabbed a beer. I held the icy bottle to my forehead, enjoying the shock of the cold bottle. I tipped it up and drank it straight down. I grabbed another and dragged my tired body to the bathroom for a cold shower. More heat was the last thing I wanted right now. The door was partially open, so I kicked it a little with my foot and dropped my beer in shock. There was this vision, this Madonna standing there in a bra and panties brushing her hair. When she heard the bottle hit the floor, she turned and stared at me for a second and started screaming. Discretion is the better part of valor, is not just an expression. I turned and ran to my room as fast as I could. I I put my dirty clothes back on and stood there a little trying to figure out what had happened. After a few minutes, I heard the Jeep come back and heard Diego come in the kitchen door. I figured it was safe for me to come out. I walked to the kitchen and saw Diego downing a beer, as I had earlier. "Gringo, you are not dressed yet. Here, take this and jump in the shower," he said and handed me another beer. I went to my room, down a long hallway from the rest of the house, and grabbed my clean clothes. I had noticed the bathroom door was open. I finally took my cold shower, needing the cold water to temper the image and its effects on me from my earlier trip to the bathroom. I guess the girl had cleaned up the broken glass. Thinking about it, I could only believe it must be Diego's daughter, and she had come back early for some reason. There was a picture of her in the hallway that looked something like the lovely beauty I'd seen. But the girl in the photo was skinny, maybe 16 years old. Maybe the same girl in some ways, but certainly not the same girl in others. The one I saw was not skinny, but lovely curves in all the right places. After the shower, I wandered down to the kitchen to grab another beer. The girl and Diego sat at the table chatting. "Gringo, this is my daughter, Delilah," he said with a twinkle in his eye. "I understand you two have already met?" Blushing, I stammered, "Yes, but not formally." I took her hand to shake it, but I just stared at her, neither shaking her hand nor letting it go. After a time, maybe 30 seconds, she blushed and pulled her hand back. Diego laughed and said, "Hey, Gringo. Her name is Delilah, but if you call her anything but Lila, you better duck." I took my beer and sat at the table with them. The beer helped calm the emotional storm raging in my head, and I was able to look at Lila and not blush. She was really quite friendly, and I started having fun. She was clearly the apple of Diego's eye. They would tease each other, and sometimes me. We did all of our talking in English. I actually understood their language fairly well. I had 4 years of high school Spanish and picked up quite a bit in my travels. I had a terrible accent, though. I was raised in rural Alabama, and what came out when I tried to speak Spanish was always received with laughs. I could pick up most of what was said and could actually read pretty fluently. The cook had left some arroz a la valenciana to be warmed up. Lila told me this was a typical Nicaraguense dish of chicken and rice. It was actually very tasty and went well with the beer. We enjoyed the meal with a lot of laughter. One incident during the meal was somewhat funny. Diego asked his daughter in Spanish if the men from the north were different, maybe bigger, he had said, laughing at her. She blushed furiously, said, "Papa." It was some time before she looked my way again. Well, needless to say, I was smitten. I didn't get too much work done the rest of the trip. Lila said she had come home early because she was bored. We spent the last 3 days of my trip going all over in the Jeep. Once we stopped in the middle of the ford of a shallow but wide stream. The water was maybe up to the axles. Except for the noise of the stream, the gurgles and burbles of water running over rocks, it was deathly quiet. We sat there enjoying the respite. Lila put her hand on my arm and leaned over and kissed me. I pulled back, then leaned in and kissed her. I mean, really kissed her. I put my hand on her leg, under her skirt, and slowly stroked it up and down her firm thigh. As I got to the edge of her panties, she jumped and pulled back immediately. I tried to tell her I was sorry, but she just sat there stone-faced, looking straight ahead. By the time we got back to the ranch, she seemed to have forgotten about it and was chattering brightly, like a blue jay. There was no repeat of anything like the kiss, until the last night. I was leaving the next morning early. Diego was driving me to the nearest town with an airstrip where I would be picked up and flown back to Managua for the trip home. It was very hot that night, and I was sleeping nude on top of the sheets, a film of sweat glistening over my body. Late, I don't know how late, I faintly heard a rustling of satin and then felt a soft weight on the edge of the bed. Startled, I started to rise up, but a hand pushed me down and Lila lay on top of me, crying softly. Not knowing what to do, I put my arms around her, slowly stroking her back slick with sweat. My hands moved with ease softly, slowly up and down. She calmed and stopped crying. "Love me, please," she whispered in my ear. There was something, I don't know. It was like walking by a graveyard at night. It felt like a hint of darkness tugging at my soul, but I was lost to the moment. It was amazing. Later, I got up to the tap on the door. Daylight still hours away, damn. What had I done? With some trepidation, I said goodbye to Nicaragua, making the long trip home. I got back to New York at the same time winter arrived. There was a cold, wind-blown rain, seemingly coming from the side. It was good to get in my apartment, back to my routine. I thought about Lila, wondering. At times I felt as if I was half in love with her, other times I knew I was. The rest of the time, I just felt guilty as hell for what I had done to her. I worked on my various reports for the Central American trip. I had to put together bound copies for each company I hired out to, plus put together formal presentations. They all liked to do this since it gave them a chance to ask questions. They would get the report, and a week later I would do the presentation. Pulling it all together kept me busy, too busy to be preoccupied with what I'd done to Lila. It started fading to the back of my mind. It must have been about 2 months after I got back I came home to the flat on a blustery, damp day. Not raining, but a heavy mist and colder than hell. I climbed up the stairs to my place. As I turned the last corner of the stairs, I was shocked. Lila was in front of my door sitting on a suitcase. I started, "Lila!" But she jumped up and ran to me, engulfing me in her arms, crying, "Jack, Jack, my gringo," she said over and over, tears running down her face. Finally, I got her separated from me and opened the door. I got a damp cloth and wiped her face off, then gave her a small brandy and a glass of water. Gradually, she calmed down, and I tried to get her to talk. I had no idea what was going on. "Jack, do you have anything to eat? I wasn't feeling well on the plane. My stomach has been upset. Some soup and crackers would be nice." She asked if she could take a shower and change clothes while I fixed her dinner. She came out of the bath wearing my terry cloth robe, lost in its size and looking 16 years old. I fed her, and then took her to the sofa in front of the gas fireplace so we could talk. She snuggled up to me, burying her face in my neck. "Jack," she whispered, "Jack, I'm pregnant." Stunned, I pulled back and looked at her. She blushed prettily and put her face in my neck again. This was something I certainly hadn't planned on. Not in my wildest dreams had I expected this. I was confused, but here she was. She was not an apparition. She was warm and real. I put her in the guest bedroom. She, of course, had no place to stay. I was up late, drinking scotch and watching the flames in the fireplace, mesmerized. I thought about what to do. It really came down to a simple non-decision. I had no choice but to take her in and care for her. It turned out it wasn't my decision to make. In the early morning pre-dawn hours, she slipped into my bed and we made slow, quiet love. Waking up later, her leg thrown carelessly over mine, I looked at her face. Peaceful, innocent. It was the face of every Madonna, of Earth woman, pregnant, carrying my spawn. I kissed her nose and her eyes slowly opened. "Jack, gringo mio," she quietly said, and then jumped up and threw her arms around me. "Jack, will you take care of me?" she pleaded, a cry of need, of lost innocence. "Lila, yes, I'll take care of you," I whispered in a tender voice. I left her in the flat that day to get settled in, telling her where the corner grocer was and giving her some money. I couldn't stay home because I had 2 presentations scheduled. Stopping at Tiffany's on the way home, I looked over rings. I decided on the spot that I did love her, maybe more than I realized. I picked out both engagement and wedding rings for both of us, not inexpensive. At the corner store, I also grabbed some flowers. Knocking on the door, I laid the flowers down and moved to the side. She opened the door, saw the flowers, and then squealed as she saw me standing there. I put my arms around her and told her I knew my love was real and deep. She pulled me in and dragged me to the bed, shedding clothes as she went. I stopped her at the edge of the bed and pulled out the engagement ring. Taking her hand, I kissed the ring finger and slid the engagement ring on. It was a trifle large, but not too much. We made love with abandon, not like that of the early morning hours. In between the waxing and waning of our physical love, we talked and made plans. The next morning I took her to buy some maternity clothes. She wasn't showing, but she was excited as hell about having a baby, so I went along with it. I started working on her green card. She was there on a tourist visa. My lawyer had handled cases like this before and knew how to make it happen. We did have to go to Montreal for a week and then come back. It was really cold there, but we had a lot of fun. After she had been there about a month, I had to make a 1-week trip to Sumatra. There were the usual political turmoil in Indonesia, and one of my clients asked me to take a first-hand look. I called back every night. Lila was still a little intimidated by New York. The 3rd night I was gone, Lila was almost hysterical when she answered the phone. Crying, she was able to get out that she had a miscarriage. She kept saying over and over, "You won't want me without the baby." I finally calmed her down, talking soothingly, like to a child. I assured her that I still loved her, and we could make new babies. I rushed home as quickly as I could. I was worried about how she was taking it. After assuring her that I was going ahead with the marriage and her permanent resident visa, she got over it quicker than I expected. I tried to get her to go out and make some friends because I was always going to have to travel. She did insist that we get rid of her maternity clothes because they made her sad. We did get married, and I was more in love with her each day. I marveled at what I had missed by staying single so long. But then I had found the perfect girl, so the wait was worth it. After a year, I couldn't imagine living without her. I spoiled her, buying her things and letting her visit her family in Nicaragua whenever she wanted to. Without my realizing it, these trips were for a longer period each time she went. One time she came back with another girl, Eva, her best friend. She said, "Querido, is it okay if she stays with us for a couple weeks? Her brother Alonso is coming up then, and they will get an apartment together." I didn't really care, so she stayed with us for a time. I saw a new side of Lila. With her friend, she was much more confident, more outgoing. I puzzled over this, but didn't think too much about it. I also noticed that when the two of them went out, to a movie or whatever, she dressed much less modestly. I didn't like this, but didn't want to say anything while her friend was staying in our apartment. The brother did show up as scheduled. I met him just the once when he came by to pick up his sister. He was tall for a Latin, with dark curly hair and handsome, I guess, in an intense way. I talked only briefly to him, but he seemed very political. I didn't ask, but I gathered he was with the remnants of the Sandinistas. Lila was gone all day helping them set up their apartment. We had our first argument that night. I was going out of town in a couple days and had wanted to spend the day together. We hadn't had much chance for real closeness while her friend was staying with us. "Gringo, you are being silly. I give you all my love, but I need my friends." I pouted for a while, but I didn't want to jeopardize an opportunity for some sex that night, so I backed off. The payoff was wonderful. Lila was lusty that night. The next day I was reading the trade press and Lila was on the phone with Eva. They were talking in rapid colloquial Spanish, of course, but without really listening I could understand most of it. I had never told her that I understood most of what I would hear, but since I never spoke Spanish, she assumed I didn't know anything. I kind of shut the conversation out, but my ears perked up when I heard something about the miscarriage. Paying attention now, I was bewildered why she would be laughing about the miscarriage. As I listened, shocked, I understood that she had never been pregnant. I couldn't hear anymore because she carried the phone into the bathroom and I could just hear indecipherable murmurs. I couldn't breathe for a moment, trying desperately to understand what this meant. It was really pretty simple, though. If she hadn't been pregnant, then everything was a sham. Her love, everything. I got up, grabbed my overcoat, and went for a walk. I went over to the bar where Tana played the guitar. I didn't want to be home, and I didn't want to be alone. I got home around 11, Lila acting half pissed and half scared. I mumbled something and went to bed. I was asleep when she came in. I left early the next morning for my trip, a day early. I left a note for Lila telling her something had come up, and I had to leave to take care of a problem that had came up. I went to Brazil, trying to concentrate on my work, but it was hopeless. I got drunk every night guzzling caipirinhas. Not the smartest thing to do. I was devastated. I guess it hit me harder because I had been single for so long. My love had become obsessive. After a couple days I called Ted, my lawyer, and told him what I needed. He said it would be expensive, but I just said, "Do it." I left Brazil a couple days early, but I didn't go home. I checked into a small hotel I liked and called Ted. He met me in a nearby bistro after he finished working. "Jack, it's not good. I'll just jump right into it. Eva and Alonso are up here raising funds for a terrorist group in Nicaragua. Lila is in the group too. She joined the group a couple of years ago when an American tourist hit her boyfriend with his car and never even slowed down. I understand that all three hate Americans with a passion. Also, I hate to tell you this, but Lila and Alonso are lovers. There are pictures in this packet. I'm sorry, Sam. Shit. Let me think. Okay, let the FBI and immigration know about Alonso and Eva. I'll take care of Lila. Okay, but don't do anything stupid. Yeah, sure. Let me know when they are picked up. I'll be at the hotel. The next morning Ted called and said that the brother and sister had been picked up. We don't have an extradition treaty with Nicaragua, but I understand we are making an exception in this case. The government there is very interested in getting their hands on them. I left and went to confront Lila. She was taking a shower when I walked in. "Jack, you are back early. Shut up and get out of the shower." "Jack, what?" I jerked the shower door open and yanked her out. Eva and Alonso were picked up this morning and are being turned over to the Nicaraguan government. "Jack, what have you done? You don't understand." "That is just the problem, Lila. I do understand. I understand all of it." I ripped open the package of pictures. The first one showed Lila having sex with Alonso. Grabbing her chin, I stuck the photo in her face. "I understand this." Taking another picture showing her having sex with him with a look of intense concentration on her face, I showed it to her. "I understand this too. Lila, what is it that you think I don't understand? About your boyfriend killed by the car?" About your activities with the terrorists? How you lied to me about being pregnant? Even about coming to my bed that night in Nicaragua? That was even part of the plan, wasn't it? Goddamn, wasn't it? I shouted. You don't know how I loved you. I gave you all of me. My heart. I gave you my soul. You should have killed me. It would have been more merciful. I threw the rest of the pictures in her face and stomped out, ignoring her screaming, Jack, I do love you. You don't understand the movement. As I slammed the door, I was sick. I got a bottle of Knob Creek from the corner store and walked to the garage where I kept my car. I needed a place to think. I kept a kayak at the Palisades Boat Club in Yonkers, on the Hudson. There wouldn't be anyone there at this time of night, but I had a key to the gate. I drove over there, got a parka and some gloves from the trunk, grabbed the bourbon and put my kayak in the water. I didn't have any plans. I was going to float down the river a ways, just thinking and becoming one with the Knob Creek. It was quiet on the river, quiet and cold. I thought of all that had happened, of my crushed love, my love that never was. Lila was just a persona, a mantle that could be worn or shorn as needed. I didn't know if I had anything to live for or not. I drifted, drinking, getting cold, thinking of the call I was probably going to make. I looked at my cell phone, stared at it. I made the call. I looked at the cold, cold river, knowing the water was icy, knowing if I slipped off the side it was over just like that. I was lonesome, and I was sure blue. I looked at the water again, wondering at the shade of blue I would turn to if I fell in. I drank some more bourbon and drifted, thinking of the call I'd made, wondering at how I could have made it, knowing I had no choice. My only choice was to live or not live. I brooded. I sipped. I finished the bottle. I took that as a sign. I wanted another bottle. That meant I had to live. To live. I shouted it as loud as I could. I want to live. I stood up and threw the empty bottle at the gods, screaming, "Screw you, Lila!" I overbalanced, slipped from the shaky kayak, kicking it away from me. I fell hard into the river, the icy cold water grabbing my parka with a death grip. With a fantastic effort, I pulled myself above water. I couldn't see the kayak. No, I shouted, "I want to live," and plunged again in the murky, black death. Weaker this time I struggled, fighting literally for my life, pulling for the surface as I tried to shed the anchor of the parka. I gasped a breath, knowing it was my last. As I went under, I burbled, "Live?" I sank, down, dark, cold. My body was shutting down, my mind, drifting dreaming. My last thought was of my call on the cell phone, to a childhood friend, Guy. The gang called him Guy, but his mama called him Guido. I came to some semblance of my senses retching on the deck of a boat. Looking up I saw the uniform of a NYPD Harbor Patrol Sergeant. He smiled at me. "We were coming upriver and saw your kayak turn over. You are one lucky SOB." Thinking of my call to Guido, I smiled back at him and nodded. 2 weeks later I reported Lila as a missing person. I started going back to the bar where Marlena was still playing the guitar and being a sometimes bartender. We dated a few times, became intimate again, and after 6 months she moved in with me. We are both happy with the arrangement. Neither of us was looking for commitments, and I damn sure wouldn't be thinking of marriage for a few years, if ever. Kids weren't even on the agenda. Maybe in a few years, but for now I was happier listening to Marlena playing the blues instead of me feeling them. I wasn't lonesome anymore and my blues were long gone. Life was good. Lila slowly woke, stiff, cold, hands tied behind her. It was dark. Moving her feet, she guessed she was on the deck of a large yacht, which was rocking in the choppy sea. Time passed, her arms painful, then numb. She heard another boat, a larger one from the sound of the engine. A tall, dark-complexioned, handsome man stood over her, smiling and solicitous. "Let me help you up," he said quietly as he cut the ropes and easily lifted her up. "Who are you?" Lila frantically asked. "What do you want with me?" "I'm Guido, a friend of Sam's. He knew me as Guy, but I outgrew that years ago. Jack asked me to do him a favor. He was my best friend." I said, "Sure." "What? Where are we?" "That's okay, Lila. Everything is okay. Jack asked me to introduce you to a guy he had a few beers with in Managua a couple of years ago." "Oh, here he is." Lila turned, face turning pale with shock as she recognized the man feared above all others by her terrorist group. As her knees turned weak with fright, she saw an evil smile come over the face of Coronel Pablo de Leon, the head of the Nicaraguan secret police. With a soft smile, he took her hand and led her to a small motorboat waiting to take them to the large Navy ship idling alongside. "Talk to me, chica. Tell me of your friends." "Oh, yes, my lovely. We shall talk a lot and get to know one another. Lila shuddered as she thought of the love she had so carelessly abused and discarded. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
The 12-hour flight to Thailand was wearing on me, and with another 12 hours to go, the cramped economy seat felt more like a torture chamber with every passing minute. Fatigue was setting in, but it was accompanied by a buzz of excitement. I was on my way to becoming an expatriate, or expat, as they're called in Thailand. 2 years after my divorce, I had finally cashed in my chips. I took my share of the house equity, half the savings, and a secret nest egg my ex-wife never knew about, and set course for the land of smiles, planning to settle there for good. With my resources, I could enjoy a comfortable retirement. Eventually, when I became eligible to tap into my 401k, I'd have even more financial freedom. My ex had tried to claim a share of that, but I reminded her that I had enough evidence of her infidelity to send to everyone we knew, including her parents. That was enough for her to back down. Sometimes I think about sending it anyway, just out of spite. My feelings for her have boiled down to pure hatred for the betrayal and destruction she brought into my life. In the end, the divorce was relatively smooth. We went with irreconcilable differences rather than adultery, though she deserved to have her actions laid bare. I wasn't interested in wasting my energy on revenge. I just wanted to move on and escape as far as possible from the memories and the pain. I had been to Thailand 20 years earlier when I was in the service. I liked the food, weather, and the women, so I decided to begin my new life there. I needed the change. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Things had to be a lot different there after all these years. I certainly was not the same man. The wounds from too many battles left me tired and scarred. I figured whatever fate awaited me had to be better than the hellish loneliness that I left behind. My name is Arthur Lee Allen. I know what you're thinking. It's not my fault. My mother was a big fan of American Western history, especially gunslingers, hence the name. I kind of liked it. In Thailand, the name would hold no special meaning. Everything would be new there. I would be a stranger in a very strange land. I had nothing to lose. My son, who rarely spoke to me, was about to finish college. The only women I was able to date back in New York were divorced, overweight, bitter, and carrying more baggage than a freight train. At 49, I was in pretty good shape with a touch of gray in my hair. I was often told that I didn't look a day over 35. I certainly wasn't ready to pack it in. Since there wasn't a lot of sex going on for me after the divorce, the gym became my sanctuary. My abs are flat and my muscles hard. I was never much of a ladies' man, shy, I guess. Some ego reinforcement and a chance to regroup were badly needed. I yearned to feel manly again and in control of my life. You look deep in thought, young man, said the man sitting directly to my right. I hadn't said much to him during the trip. He looked to be about 60-something. His face showed the wisdom of a life hard-lived. He seemed to sense my mood. I just left my entire life back in the States. I sure hope I'm doing the right thing. You'll be fine, son, he said, smiling. I'm Gary Francis, he said, extending his hand. He had the quiet bearing of a man who knew what he was talking about. I'm Arthur Lee Allen. Pleased to meet you, I answered, reading his mind. He didn't comment on the name. The old man looked glad for the company. Glad to meet you, Arthur. I've lived in Thailand 22 years. I have often thought of moving back to the States, but I never will. I will spend my last days in Thailand. I guess you could say I'm a battle-hardened old veteran of the game. I thought of him as the old man in the military sense of using the term to describe a respected commanding officer. Game? What game? I said, now intrigued. He looked at me with the patience of a wise and seasoned teacher. The use of the word son drew me to him. For some reason, I trusted him immediately. You will experience some of the most selfless acts of kindness and generosity imaginable, as well as considerable lies, deceit, and manipulation for the purpose of separating you from your cash. It's the way it is, their way of life. You are about to enter a world of fantasy, son. For them, it's about survival. Pensions and social security are not the rule there. For most Thais, there is no safety net. The object of the game is to survive their world with your wallet, integrity, and pride intact while having as much fun as possible. Many a man has checked his brain at the airport and lived to regret it. He shared with me much of what he had learned. I felt like I should be taking notes. I paid real close attention to his words. I suddenly started to feel overwhelmed and anxious. You've got to understand that the rules will be different when you leave this plane. What are the rules? Well, to start with, you have never seen so many available beautiful young women. Smile, and they will treat you better than you could ever imagine. Many will try to train you, then exploit you. It can be difficult to sort out what is real. Believe half of what you see and nothing of what you hear. For example, the lady boys are some of the most beautiful women you will see. The Thais call them Katois. Lady boys? Is that like gay? I asked, innocently. More than gay, they are pre-op and post-op transsexuals. Some of them are truly amazing. It's all an illusion. Much of what you think you see will be an illusion. That's just the beginning. The famous Thai smile is both a sword and a shield. It doesn't mean the same thing as a smile back home. If they smile, you smile. It's also your sword and shield. You will learn as you go along. Just remember, don't surrender your power and make yourself happy. It's time in your life to think about your needs. Compromise is okay, but don't sacrifice too much. Stay in control, stay strong. Set limits and see with your eyes and brain, not your little willy. If something doesn't feel correct, it probably isn't. Thai women have no respect for a chicken, so don't allow that to happen. Why would I do that? In Thailand, it's easier than you would think. A guy like you is a ripe target. You want companionship and sex. They want money. You are not the predator in the land of smiles. You're the prey. They will strip your wallet and heart to the bone and laugh at you for being stupid enough to let them. I struggled to absorb all of what he said. One more thing. Feel free to fall in love. That is with a different lady every day. We expats call them LBFMs. What's that? Little brown sex machines, Gary answered, smiling as his mind flashed back to another place and time. Most of the ladies of the night are not wife material. They are prostitutes. Some idiots call them sex workers. If she sells sex for a living, she's a prostitute. If she's been in the game longer than a month or two, forget about it. She's damaged goods. Don't forget that. Treat them with respect, pay them in the morning, and send them on their way. Their jealousy and possessiveness are based on ownership of clients, not love. It looks like affection or love, but that's not what it is. Play with them, as they are most certainly are playing with you. And don't put up with any shit. If she starts to throw things or get violent, put her out. That's how you play the game, son. Is that all I have to look forward to? Don't get me wrong. If you find a so-called good girl, you might find a woman that would make an excellent life companion. Look for them in areas away from where Farang usually go. However, their family and friends will usually have higher priority than you. If you are real lucky, you might find one that thinks more like a girl back home. Ironically, it's their exotic nature that's so appealing. At the same time, it's like dealing with creatures from another planet. Beware, my friend. Many good girls have adopted the tactics of their more unscrupulous sisters. Learn some Thai. If you don't let them know that you understand their conversations, you'll learn a lot. Farang. It means foreigner. Often it is used negatively by Thais. You will never be totally accepted by Thai society. You and I will always be foreigners. Yours odds improve if she is educated and older than 30. The young girls are just too full of themselves. Most of them don't realize they have a short self-life. Just don't look for your dream girl in a go-go bar. Think of them as attractions in an adult Disneyland. A nice place to visit, but you don't want to live there. The working girls are fun. Accept them for what they are. Love him and leave him. One more thing. Remember, the Farang always pays. They know you are richer than them, therefore, they feel no guilt about you picking up the tab. Good luck, son. You're going to need it. Every day will be an adventure. Expect the unexpected. Don't expect the law to offer any protection. The biggest mafia in the country are the police. Thanks, I'll remember what you said. At least my eyes will be open when the plane lands. I owe you. I hope that our paths cross again. I'm sure we'll talk again, he replied. Your advice is greatly appreciated. I don't know if I'm ready for this. He gave me his phone number. I knew I would be calling him, sooner or later. The plane landed, and we set off to follow our individual destinies. As soon as I left the airport, the Bangkok air enveloped me. It was hot and humid. I started sweating immediately. The air smelled of unknown plant life, auto exhaust, Thai spices, and elements I could not identify. It would take me a while before I adjusted to my new home. I bought a condo and settled into my new life. The next several months were a haze of bars and women. Each promised to love me long time as long as I bought them drinks, paid the bar fine, the fee to take a girl out of the bar, and paid them about 2,000 baht, $50 to $60, the next morning. I never forgot that it was all about the money. All of them very happy to see my money. They truly loved my wallet. As soon as I would enter my favorite bar, I would be surrounded by 3 or 4 near-naked women. I was aware that what I truly wanted, I couldn't buy. A very pretty girl told me that she missed every day and she happy for my return. That was strange. I had never seen her before. I met many expats who had been playing the game for years. They were dedicated sex-mongers, commonly called punters. To each his own, I guess. None that I met seemed really happy. They drank a lot and complained about the Thai way of doing things constantly. After a while, it looked like I had traded one kind of hell for another. They seemed to be lonely even with two beautiful girls sitting on their lap. To me, life had to have some meaning greater than mindless hedonistic self-gratification. Sex without love or real intimacy gets old real quick. Every place I went in Soy Cowboy, Nana Plaza, and Pat Pong, I was greeted with, "Hi, handsome man. What your name? You want buy me drink and pay bar fine me? Oh, you so big. Where you stay? Let's go your hotel. I love you too much." They were all different, yet the same. I couldn't believe my eyes when I entered my first go-go bar. It was Susie Wong's, I think, in Soy Cowboy. There were at least 40 topless dancers flirting with big-bellied customers from all over the world. Some of them danced, while others shuffled their feet. Many of the men were obnoxious and drunk, and the women were young and sexy. The music was loud and smoke hung heavy in the air. It struck me as a strip club on steroids. Every female in sight was on sale. The dancers wore numbers. All a man had to do was tell them a massin what number he wanted, and the dancer would come to his table to talk business. Most wanted a quick short-time trip to a nearby hotel so they could get back and try it again. The entire place, and the others like it, was a commercial sex machine. If a guy was looking to get laid, he was in the right place. I soon found out that the bar fine was usually around $15, 500 to 600 baht. Following Gary's advice, I fell in love every day with Tip, Noi, Korn, Da, and a number of others whose names I can't remember. They were not like professional sex workers in the States. Most tried to provide a girlfriend experience for a price. Often money would not be mentioned until the next morning. How much I gave a lady was up to me. The usual rate for a long-time visit, one night, was about 2,000 baht, $50 to $60. At least, I got the pleasure of a beautiful, cooperative woman for a couple of hours or a night. I wondered how long I could live on a steady diet of make-believe bullshit. How many guys have spent big bucks at home trying to impress some self-absorbed, spoiled female with his ability to provide and ended up with a peck on the cheek? At least, the hookers I kept company with were honest about their intent. I found them charming, feminine, calculating, and predatory. Nevertheless, I drank too much, stayed up too late, and had too much loveless, meaningless sex. I felt lonely and empty without a woman to call my own. At least, I didn't waste any time thinking about the world I left behind. I woke up one morning with two women in my bed, and I had no idea who they were or how they got there. I realized that I needed more than an endless series of one-night stands. My behavior was out of character. I felt like a dog chasing my own tail. I was sexually drained, yet frustrated. It was the price for becoming a Bangkok warrior, as Gary had put it. Then, my world changed. Lamai came into my life. She was able to read the quiet desperation in my eyes. That ability to sense my need was to cost me dearly later. Lamai was a walking Asian sex machine. I first saw her on the SkyTrain. She was dressed in a business suit which was both very sexy and classy at the same time. She was tall for a Thai, and her skin was lighter due to her Chinese heritage. She was about 5 feet 9 inches in heels. Her short skirt emphasized her long legs. She moved with the grace of a leopard, and her face took my breath away. I couldn't help but smile like a smitten adolescent as my eyes locked onto her. I wanted to run my fingers through her raven black hair which flowed down her back. I was in love. She noticed my gaze and returned my smile. She looked to be an office worker of some kind. She had a class about her that separated her from the Ison peasant girls I had been sleeping with. I found out later that she an office temp. At least, that's what she said. I quickly introduced myself and was relieved that her English was pretty good. I asked if she could meet me somewhere for coffee, dinner, a walk in the park, anything. She said she could meet me at Starbucks on Succumbit Road at 6 p.m. We met and my life took a new turn. Time passed quickly. She was easy to get along with and curious about many things. I told her about my life back in the States and how I hoped to meet someone in Thailand to settle down with. Her eyes seemed to light up when I told her that. I wanted to believe the light in her eyes was showing genuine interest in me and not dollar signs. I like Farong Min. Thai man no good. He butterflies too much, cannot trust, she said, searching my face for a reaction. I need man who want to take care of me, and I take good care of him. I 28 now, getting old. I thought to myself, here we go, the same old bullshit. Old? This woman is a vision, a work of art, I thought to myself. In the States, she would stop traffic and cause old men to have heart attacks. She had no idea of how pretty she actually was. Where I came from, men would pay just to talk with her. In Thailand, she was one of many. She didn't look like she was old to me. Lamai was at that age when women begin to blossom to full womanhood. Her easygoing feminine ways felt like quicksand to me, as I was pulled in deeper and deeper. She told me she had to work 7 days a week sometimes and made only 10,000 baht a month, about $260. From that, she had to pay for rent, food, car fare, and send money to her family in the province. She was raised near the northern city of Chiang Rai. I didn't detect any self-pity, just acceptance of her fate. As she spoke, I couldn't help but feel the need to help her, to give her my protection. I hadn't felt like that in many years. She wasn't a bar girl. I felt safe with her. I decided to try to be Prince Charming. I know, big mistake. I choked back the nagging warnings that Gary had planted in my head, yet they were always there. I proceeded to explore the possibilities with caution. Do you have a boyfriend? No, no boyfriend. I was married before. He no good, drink too much and spend money at casino. He has a minor wife. She calls house sometimes, 'cause big trouble. Then, he beat me and tell me he leaving. I not see him again and cry a lot. I wanted to kick his butt for hurting her. She somehow brought out my protective instincts. I knew what Gary would say if I told him that was falling so hard for Lamai so soon. He would say, "Watch your back, son." She seemed different from the sharks I had been warned about and had associated with in the bars. I wanted to believe she really was different. I decided to proceed with caution. I think you kind and good man. I can read you. You need lady care for you. Many Thais ladies like you very much. I don't care about many Thais ladies. I want you to like me. Why? I think you are beautiful and a nice person too. I'm not so special. Many Thais ladies like me. Maybe, you know like me much when you know me better. I wondered if she was trying to tell me something. I didn't want to think about that. How did you learn English so well? I go to English school and pick up here and there. You think I talk good? Better than most? I was just curious. I knew that frequent contact with Farangs was how bar girls learned basic English. The first time we made love, I fell in love. Her body was firm and soft at the same time. Her skin, like fine Asian silk, was addictive. We started make slow, passionate love. That didn't last long. Soon, we were devouring each other. All of my pain, frustration, and loneliness came pouring out. I never wanted to let her go. Melting into one another, passion and lust overwhelmed me. I couldn't get enough of her. We made love until exhaustion overtook me. The next morning I woke up to her climbing onto my manhood. It was pure sex, just wild sensuality and pleasure. I loved it. Then, she gave me a massage that made me horny again. It scared me to feel that happy and young again. Despite my resolution to control myself, I was becoming more vulnerable by the minute. Weeks and months passed. Lamai was all I ever wanted or needed in a woman. It didn't take long before I wanted her to move in with me. When I mentioned it, she said, maybe soon, and changed the subject. Having all of the advantages and none of the disadvantages of a live-in girlfriend worked for me. There was no rush. I let it drop. Things were fine the way we were. I felt like a king. She was with me almost every evening. She washed my clothes, cooked for me, cleaned my condo, and gave me mind-blowing sex as often as could handle it. She never asked for money, and her favorite expression was, "Up to you." We went to many places together. Lamai was always close by, discreetly touching me in some way. I couldn't believe I was in a relationship that did not require constant compromise or argument. She never once flirted with another man. I enjoyed their envious looks when we were out together. Whenever I took her someplace or bought her a present, she always showed appreciation for my thoughtfulness. I couldn't believe my luck. We took care of each other. I needed to do something to fill my time while Lamai was at work. I found an orphanage not far from where I lived and began to teach English. The kids were fun, and I loved spending time with them. I don't know if I was any good at it, but the kids loved me, and they became important to my existence. I met some dedicated people at the orphanage. There was a young teacher there whose friendly help and pretty face caught my eye. Her name was Thung. I decided not to pursue her. She'd secretly would look at me with inviting eyes, but I was determined to be faithful to Lamai. Thung was the kind of woman that would fully expect the man she had sex with to marry her. She was the definition of a good girl. Temptation to stray was everywhere. In massage parlors, beer bars, and just strolling down the street. I had enough on my plate with Lamai. She didn't leave me with enough energy to deal with other women. When I wasn't teaching, I went to Thai language school. In time, my comprehension became pretty good. My ability to actually speak Thai progressed more slowly. Remembering what Gary had said, I kept my knowledge to myself. It was astounding to hear what Thais said in the presence of Farong. They have this ability to call a Farong the son of soy dog or water buffalo as they smiled in your face. The love for Farong was not nearly equal to their love of Farong money. For some reason, I didn't let Lamai know that I was studying Thai and could understand some of her phone conversations. I needed more time to completely trust her. Her mysterious nature was both exotic and somehow threatening. She often said that Farong who know too much no good. I wondered why she would think that. I knew that all women have their secrets, especially Thai women. I wanted access to those secrets before I could lower my guard. She tended to have trouble accounting for where she'd been and what she had been doing from time to time. I decided to sleep with one eye open, so to speak. I watched and waited for any red flags to appear, hoping none would. Anxiety churned inside me. I was not about to trade one bad domestic situation for another. Time would sort things out. After several months, the haze of lust and infatuation had cleared enough for me to start looking at Lamai objectively. She didn't like me asking too many questions about her life. Sometimes, my efforts led to some serious mood swings and tantrums which passed quickly. I tended to avoid confrontations. My world started to unravel when I decided to ask some hard questions after I concluded things were not quite right. Why have I not met your family, Lamai? They live far, far. Don't worry. We go someday soon. Where did you get the money to buy the gold jewelry you have on your salary? Your phone cost at least 6,000 baht. And where do you disappear to for hours, sometimes at night? I call you, but your phone is turned off. What's going on? Why you question me? I love you. Why you make trouble? You not trust me? My questions made her angry and agitated. I didn't understand her reaction. I was sensing doom on the horizon. I know you love me, but please answer my questions. Make me feel better. I need to know. We need to be honest with each other. To me, honesty, trust, and loyalty are very important. I will not put up with lying or any break of my trust. You should know this. I want us to be open with each other. I ask for nothing that I am not willing to give you. Do you understand what I'm saying? It is important for our future that you do. Why Farong always talk of trust and honesty? These things not so important in Thailand. Peace and family, keeping face more important. Farong think too much. I wondered what the hell did that mean? I had the strong feeling that my words and attitude confused her. It was as if she could not comprehend what I was getting at. She could not understand why I was making her lose face through my questions and insistence on the truth, which was extremely important to me. Problems tended to happen whenever the conversation became intense. Our normal ability to communicate became difficult when she didn't want to answer a question or deal with something unpleasant. She would use anger or the pretense of language difficulties to change the subject. I wasn't going to let her get away with it this time. You know, love me. You want to keep me in cage. I need freedom. You not understand me. You only care yourself. She was raising her voice, about to go off. Freedom to do what? I pay the bills and take care of you. What the hell are you talking about? Are you cheating on me? Can I trust you? I wasn't going to take any crap or deception. No, no, no. I know cheat. You are man I love. Only you, sweetheart. I visit my friends sometime. Gold from old boyfriend. He from Sweden, gone back long time. You jealous? No good. Now, I sad. Arthur. You make Lamai very sad. She ran into the bathroom and slammed the door. I could see that the conversation was going nowhere. As usual, her answers didn't satisfy me. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was either lying or not telling me the whole truth. Before I could consider taking the relationship to the next level, I had to find some answers. Looking back, I was compelled to confirm what my gut was already knew. I needed confirmation. When she came out of the bathroom, she was crying. She ran to me and placed her tear-stained face on my chest. I'm not mad now. I love you too much, sweetheart, she said, dropping to her knees. I was determined to get some answers. Okay, I want to meet your friends. Could I do that? She looked concerned for a minute, then she agreed. The next evening, I found myself in a restaurant filled with Thais. I was the only Farong there. Lamai had invited 5 of her friends to join us. 2 were male. I could understand a little of what was being said. I sat there spacing out, listening to the chatter until I heard one of the males, who she said was her cousin, say something to Lamai. When are you going to make your Farong uncle buy house for you? I know like you sleeping with this ugly water buffalo. You can make him pay 500,000 or maybe 1 million baht sinsat. Then, we can be together. Remember, I am your husband. You stink with the smell of this Farong. My first thought was what? Water buffalo. To be called uncle and water buffalo was a major insult and signaled great disrespect. 1 million baht was close to $30,000. Did I hear what I think I heard? Sin Sat is the Thai version of a bride price. In Thailand, the prospective groom was sometimes expected to pay this to show honor to the bride and her family. Some families extorted this money from Farangs because they could. Sometimes, it was given back to the bride as a kind of marriage insurance. It is a practice that doesn't set too well with most Farangs. Thais expect Farangs to accept their culture and couldn't give a crap about theirs. Lamai and I had never seriously spoken of marriage or Sin Sat. She didn't seem upset by his insults. The scent of betrayal was strong in the air. What was this being together stuff? Husband? My throat tightened with rage, sadness, and pain. Resignation soon followed. I had to accept what I had just heard. I was beginning to feel like an old warrior myself. My world had crashed. Who was this woman? I decided to play the hand out. I wanted to see what would happen next. I controlled the anger building in my heart. I knew revenge was a risky thing in Thailand. There would surely be retaliation from her husband and friends. I needed a plan. However, I was not going to let her get away with her treachery. I thought, how could she do this to me? I wondered what I had done in a past life to deserve this treatment. I treated her like a princess. It appeared that the reason she never pressured me for money was that I was being set up for the big score. I braced myself for the end of my relationship. I tried to wall off my emotions for self-protection. The end was near. I would miss her. I hoped that in her own way, she really did care for me, or did she? She surely didn't define love the way I did. When she used the word, it was hollow, having little or no meaning. I began to wonder if she even liked me. It was hard to believe anybody could be that good of an actress. When the dinner was over, her friends went their way. I heard the man who had been speaking to Lamai earlier say, "Soon you can come back to my bed and leave this stinking big Willie Farong. You should be with me, your husband. Pressure him. Tell him you must be married soon." He smiled at me as he spoke. It was everything I could do to keep from snapping his skinny neck and hers. Lamai laughed at his remarks. She took my arm lovingly as we walked back into the crowded Bangkok street. I had to be patient, but not too patient. I needed time to put my condo up for sale and arranged to move to the northern city of Chiang Mai. After I took my revenge for Lamai's betrayal, I would move far away. Lamai started throwing very strong hints that she wanted me to make an honest woman out of her. When she went asleep, I searched her purse for the first time. I found 2 phones. One of them had names like Ryan, Nathan, Luke, and Vince stored in it. I resisted the urge to throw the phone out of the window. She had a date book with client names, dates, and hotels. I felt like such a sucker. The times indicated were all between 6 p.m. and 10 o'clock. After work, she was an escort. That's why she never needed to ask me for money. I had to give it to her. "She's good. Sweetheart, do you love me?" she asked in her most vulnerable voice. "Sure, I do. Why do you ask?" The game had begun. "I want us to marry. When I take you to family, I must say that we will marry." "Why?" "I lose big face and family if they know I sleep with you and not marry." I almost laughed in her face. She was using Thai logic on me. What she said was true, even more true when in the provinces. Too bad she was full of crap and already married. I might have been sympathetic. "I think you're right, Lamai. You are a loving, faithful companion. I should marry you. We should marry soon. I want you to be my wife. I will love you forever." "Oh, sweetheart. I'm so happy. I tell family and friends. I want marry in province, so village can come and see my handsome husband. My family will gain much face." She paused for a minute. "You know you give family Sin Sat. It is Thai tradition. Very important. I know about Sin Sat. How much?" "I think 1 million baht." She said it as a question. "A million baht. I'm not rich," I said, playing her game. She thought another minute and said, "Okay, 500,000 would be okay." She looked at me with hopeful eyes. "I think I can do that. It's a heavy price, but I want to make you happy." Tears slid down her face. If I didn't know better, I would have sworn her look portrayed genuine gratitude and love. She hugged me for a long time, not speaking. Her arms trembled. The heat of her hands penetrated my back. She was good. "Sweetheart, I not deserve man like you. I must have been very good in past life. Our love very strong. I love you too much," she said as she seductively stripped for me. Testosterone surged through my veins. If I could not have her loyalty, I would take her body, probably for the last time. I felt like I was cursed to love unfaithful women. "I am going to give you some money. I want you to go home and arrange an engagement party. Invite everyone in the village. Buy lots to eat and drink. Hire a band. You know what to do. Go tomorrow. I will join you in 3 days." I will bring sin sat and many baht of gold for all to see when I come to the party. Everyone will be jealous of you. They will know how much I treasure your love and devotion to me. Devotion? It means being true and loyal, I said, gritting my teeth. Then I took her, not caring about her pleasure, only mine. I did her with anger and lust. Then we rested exhausted in each other's arms, each lost in their own thoughts. She left the next day to set everything up. I rented out my condo and had my possessions shipped to Chiang Mai. On the day of the big party, I called Lamai. Many people will come. Everyone wants to see you and my sin sat. I want to see you, handsome man. Please hurry. I wait for you every minute. She was very excited. I will be there. Start the party. I will come soon. I love you, bye. I hung up the phone with sadness in my heart. I would never see her again. The loss of face she was about to suffer would be powerful revenge for her betrayal. On the day of the party, there were at least 200 people in attendance. People danced, ate, and drank with abandon. The messenger that I had hired entered the room and went directly to the microphone after whispering something in a band member's ear. He spoke in Thai. Attention, please. I have a message from the man Lamai is supposed to marry. The crowd hushed, a ripple of curiosity spreading through the room. He says he will not be coming tonight. He will not come because Lamai is a lying, cheating woman who doesn't love him. She's already married and planned to divorce her husband after receiving her sin sat and new house. He says his heart is broken and hopes she spends the rest of her life reflecting on what could have been, until she's old and gray. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Lamai, who stood frozen in shock, her face an unreadable mask before twisting into a mixture of rage, embarrassment, and disbelief. She trembled slightly as if every eye in the room burned into her. That damned Farang tricked me, she hissed to her husband, who sat nearby looking equal parts drunk and disappointed. Meanwhile, I was adjusting well to my new life. Chiang Mai's cooler weather and fresher air made it a welcome change from Bangkok. I found a small orphanage and began teaching English again, something that gave me purpose. If I ever craved female company, it wasn't hard to find. All it took was a stroll through certain parts of town to hear the familiar refrain. Hello, handsome man. Where you from? You want take me hotel for Boom Boom? Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.